Welcome to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is indeed my show. I'm glad that you can join me. You could be anywhere this morning doing news and politics, and you just so happen to find yourself here. And I appreciate you for finding yourself here. I'm laughing because, look, we cover heavy topics, and we cover heavy topics like first thing in the morning. Um, I appreciate you joining me. I'll just say it that way. Um, I may run into streaming issues. Apparently, my device is running out of memory. I thought it was unlimited. Apparently, it's not unlimited. I'm going to have to work that out. I found a workaround this morning. I'm hoping the workaround holds for the time of this show, and I can figure out the rest later in the evening. Either way, so far so good. Things seem to be going all right. I don't see anything blowing up. The world is great. What's happening? Chat, Sir Bikes a lot. It is great seeing you. Move off that operating music, please. I don't control that. That's a StreamYard thing. I don't control that, Sir Bikes a lot. I am deeply happy that you've joined me. I'm deeply happy that you're contributing to the content. The music, I don't control. That's a Streamlabs thing, or StreamYards thing, I guess it's called. Um, Damn good show for you today. Full show for you today. Scott Ritter is going to join at 7:30. Daniel McAdams is going to join at 9:30. Dane Kovalik is going to join at 9 o'clock. Ted Rall is going to join at 9 a.m. So we have a full show. I must start with Joy Ann Reid. I got to start with Joy Ann Reid. Joy Ann Reid has recently been fired from MSNBC, and I don't mean to laugh at that, even though I know I have a smile on my face. The smile on my face is an emotional reaction. Intellectually, I feel different, especially after watching her video. These are the same people that were perfectly okay with me losing my job. These are the same people that were okay with RT and Sputnik losing their jobs. So if I have a smile on my face, it is coming from that. I'm not a horrible person, but I do feel some kind of way that they danced on our graves, or were okay with dancing on our graves because of the whole Trump and Russia stuff. And so if we lose our jobs, that's okay. Now, Joy Ann Reid has found herself in a similar position. And MSNBC has fired Joy Ann Reid. To her credit, she has talked about Gaza. She's talked about Gaza in a way that many of the other people on the network would not. I give her credit for that. She's also a lunatic. And some of the things that she said on Rushgate stuff is outrageous. But she has talked about the Gaza stuff. I'm trying to nail that down because I felt bad for her watching this video. So this is Reid after being fired. This is Joy Ann Reid after being fired. I would have never made this video. I would have never made this video. Even if I felt this way, I would have never made this video. I would have never have put myself out there to be that emotionally raw. To be that emotionally raw. I don't find it to be beneficial. And I get the sense that the people who fired you are tap dancing on your grave, which doubly doesn't make it beneficial. But it's honest. And maybe too honest. This is Joy Ann Reid in her basement somewhere freaking out over the fact that she lost her job. I'll play the clip. You can make your own take.
My show had value, and that I'm sorry that that what I was doing had value. And in the end, I'm sorry, I try not to cry on TV. And I think this is kind of like being on TV, so I apologize. And that it mattered. I see Karen is there, and she's been texting me as well. And so what I will just say is that in the end, thank you. Where I land is that the moment of guilt that I felt, that I went hard on so many issues, whether it was the Black Lives Matter issues of a young baby or a mom or a dad that was killed, or when we opened up people's eyes to the fact that Asian Americans were being targeted and not just Black folks, or went hard for immigrants who've done nothing but come to this country like my parents did, and try to make a life and defended them, or whether we've talked about what the president is doing that is subversive to the Constitution, that is injurious to our liberty, defending books that people find inconvenient, that Nicole Hannah Jones put into our spirit, that we need to understand 1619 as the real founding of this country, whether it's talking about any of these issues, and yes, whether it's talking about Gaza and the fact that we as the American people have a right to object, to little babies being bombed. And where I come down on that is I'm not sorry. I am not sorry that I stood up for those things, because those things are of God. And I'm a church girl too, and those are the things that I was taught were of God. And so I'm not sorry. I'm just proud of my show.
She's not sorry. She is proud of her show. Fair enough. Look, I don't like seeing anybody cry. I don't want to see anybody lose their jobs. I feel some kind of way that they were okay with us losing our jobs. So there's that. She is right that going after certain issues, be it blowing babies to bits in Gaza, standing up, I guess, for immigrants, those are good things to a certain degree. I mean, it depends on the country and what that country can tolerate. I don't like seeing anybody cry. It's that. I think it's that more than anything else. If she didn't cry, I would feel much better stomping on her grave in this case. Whether her show had value, I don't know. I mean, it wasn't all that well watched. I would imagine she did what she thought was right in regards to operating her show and the topics that they hit. So fair enough. But this is the same woman that came out and did a video saying that Donald Trump was Hitler and compared Trump, Putin, Hitler, Mussolini, and Nicolas Maduro as being equals. So, yeah, she looked bad in this moment. But, there is a context. There's a context. Like I said, I don't care. If I felt that, I would never come on and do some shit like that. I mean, she's effectively crying about losing her show. I would imagine it is painful to lose a show as somebody who lost the show for doing God's work. Yeah, Ann Reid, she's been fired. She no longer has a show. She's crying on air about losing her show. And as I said, I believe that she believes everything she's saying. When you get to Trump and Russia, when you get to the war, when you get to the continuity of that war and the way that liberals have effectively believed that the war should continue, yeah, that's a trash take. And it's a trash take that's getting all of these people killed that they don't seem to recognize. So, it's like, no, I don't want to see anybody cry on air. But there's a context by which the person did lose that job. And let's be clear, it wasn't that MSNBC cared all that much about Ann Reid per se. Her ratings weren't good, and she was hitting issues of Gaza, which I would imagine they didn't necessarily like. The Russiagate stuff, they were fine with. The prolonging the war stuff, they were fine with. Anything that's said about Trump, including Trump as Hitler, they were fine with. And these are things that featured prominently on Ann Reid's show. So, it's not a loss, at least from my take. No, I don't want to see anybody lose a job. Is it a loss? No. No. I don't mean to be brutal. I'm just being honest. Don't mean to be brutal. Just being honest. Macron. No, I'm not going to go to Macron. I'm going to go to this fuckface, Brian Stelter. I'm going to go to fuckface Brian Stelter. This is an astonishing thing to say. And I've heard Americans say it before. I've heard Lindsey Graham say it. I've heard, I forget the guy with the eye patch, I think, Dan Crenshaw. I've heard them say this. It is grotesque to a radical degree. This is Brian Stelter. Listen to what he says here. This is an astonishing thing to say aloud, and to say it with infinite confidence that what's being said is okay.
Explicit, at least it's pretty obvious what's happening. Some of this I fear is about illiteracy on the part of the voters, not knowing, for example, about the spending that's going to Ukraine that's actually funding American technology, right? Funding American manufacturing plants. And by the time you do learn those facts, it's too late.
But I do think, look, not to
be explicit, at least it's
Just to give context, Stelter is talking about the war in Ukraine. And he's talking about the money, the billions of dollars that is being dumped to keep the war going. It is a war that Ukraine has lost. But Stelter is sitting here effectively saying, look, this money is coming back to us. And because the money is coming back to us, it's not that big of a deal. Nearly 1 million people have been killed. And somehow Stelter doesn't connect the money that is going into it that is allowing those people to continue to be killed. Stelter's take is that, hey, the money is coming back to us. What's the big deal? We are getting all of this money, all of this hundreds of billions of dollars are going to our weapons manufacturers. Isn't this phenomenal? And the moment that you explain that to the American public, it's too late. So, the American public shouldn't feel any kind of way about all of these people being killed and all of this money going into Ukraine because we're getting the money back. Are you out of your mind? Are you out of your mind? What you are saying is true, but there is a consequence for it. The consequence being hundreds of thousands of people are being killed. Why doesn't that matter to you? Like, why is that irrelevant to Brian Stelter? Why, in this moment, as Stelter is making this argument with the dome that he has at his disposal, and it's a mighty dome, why doesn't the fact that all of that money that is being dumped into Ukraine is also equivalent to people losing their lives, why doesn't that register to Stelter? Why? How have these people become so dead on the inside? As Joy Ann Reid says, she's a church girl. I'm not a church guy. I grew up in a church. As a basic minimum, people losing their lives is usually seen as a negative. Usually. Stelter doesn't seem to get that. And instead, his focus is on, hey, our weapons manufacturers are doing phenomenal. So what is the issue? The issue, Stelter, is that the weapons manufacturers are doing phenomenal for war, A, that should have never taken place, and B, massive number of people are losing their lives. It's that. How is Stelter missing that? How does a man with a dome, this radical, miss something very basic that we are talking very cavalier about human life? If Stelter's ass was dragged out and put into a press gang and was forced to fight a war where they put a potato and a gun in his hand, he would come to a different conclusion. He wouldn't be this cavalier, so smooth in his suit, with other pretty people in their suits, intellectuals, as they like to consider themselves, cavalierly talking about hundreds of thousands of people being blown away for the profit of a few weapon manufacturers. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. I'll play it again.
Explicit, at least it's pretty obvious what's happening. Some of this I fear is about illiteracy on the part of the voters, not knowing, for example, about the spending that's going to Ukraine that's actually funding American technology, right? Funding American manufacturing plants. And by the time you do learn those facts, it's too late.
But I do think, look, not to
And by the time you do learn those facts, it's too late. You would obviously be on the side of supporting the war. You would obviously be on board for us dumping more and more money and weapons into Ukraine. You would obviously be on that side if you understood that our weapons manufacturers are doing phenomenal. You're out of your fucking mind. He is out of his mind. This callous, cavalier attitude towards the destruction and elimination of life is disturbing. And somewhere along the way, liberals have lopped in on this also, where in their minds, going after Trump means going after everything that Donald Trump is doing, whether there is a value set to it or not. And what I mean by that is it's one thing to take a perspective when you have a value set and the world is relative to your value set. You are a fixed entity in reality space. And there are things that you believe in that you regard the world with as you peruse the world. A fixed value set will look at that and say, hey, those people are losing their lives. That's horrible. If you are entirely relative to whatever is happening around you, where you are not fixed to anything, you're just floating in the wind. I don't like Trump, so whatever Trump is doing is bad. You're out of your mind. You've missed the boat. You've lost the thread. If he is ending a war, applaud him for that. If you need to hit him for what he's doing in America, hit him for what he's doing in America. Those are different things. I'm saying that your values, in the way that Democrats always talk about their values, should bring you to a place of he's ending the war that is good. And these arguments of, well, this money is coming back to us, so what is the big deal with hundreds of thousands of people losing their lives? That is outrageous argument. That is the argument that Stelter is making. That is the argument that many are making in regards to, well, at the very least they were making. I'm trying to point out, though, that liberals have taken this weird disposition that because Donald Trump is doing something, by definition, it is wrong. And I'm saying that is absurd. A broken clock is right twice a day. In this case, if Trump is saying, all of these people are dying for no reason, I'm going to stop it, you should applaud him for it. It doesn't mean that you think Doge is great. It doesn't mean that you think Elon Musk is great. It doesn't mean that you think that the destruction of these government entities is. It doesn't mean any of that. It does mean that you look at reality for what it is. And if he is indeed trying to end a war, that is a good thing by any value set of, is not a sociopath or psychopath. Stelter is out of his goddamn mind in that take. Just completely out of his mind. But my guest is here, and I want to bring him on. I am joined with the one, the only Scott Ritter. Scott Ritter is a weapons of mass destruction whistleblower. Okay, I don't know what that was. Scott Ritter is a weapons of mass destruction whistleblower. Scott, welcome to the show, man. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, thanks. Yourself?
I am doing great. I am better that you are with me. I have to get your take overall negotiations that are taking place between Donald Trump and Putin. Trump pointed out, or at the very least Putin pointed out, I don't remember which one. They both seem to be on the same page. They said that they're discussing a major deal. I think that was Trump who said that. Macron is here. Apparently Keir Starmer is going to be coming also. They're trying to deter and derail these negotiations. What do you think they're talking about? It can't just be about the Ukraine war. If it's about the Ukraine war, the U.S. is too limited to do anything in real terms on that. So it has to be something larger for them to be having this discussion. And Trump himself did say that they're talking about a major deal. What do you think that conversation is that they're having?
Well, again, I tried to tell people the Ukraine conflict is rooted in a decades-long posture by the United States regarding first the Soviet Union and later Russia that is confrontational in nature, adversarial based. We had one brief shining moment of friendship breakout from 1988 until 1992. The United States went back to its policy of seeking to deconstruct Russia, to restrict Russia, to weaken Russia, to suppress Russia. And then when Russia refused to cooperate, when Vladimir Putin became the president on New Year's 1999, 2000, we took an even more aggressive posture towards it. And this manifested itself in the Ukraine conflict. So, the Russians have said, and the United States has likewise said that, bringing an end to the fighting that doesn't solve the underlying causes of the war just means that the fighting is going to re-erupt a few years from now, and we'll be doing this all over again. So in order to resolve the Ukraine conflict, we have to resolve the fundamental disconnect in U.S.-Russian relations. And I think what we're seeing with the Trump administration is the realization of the reality that he isn't seeking to sustain the militaristic approach which defined U.S. policy, the projection of power globally. He is looking for something completely different, more of a transactional relationship that is heavily focused on mutual economic benefit and cooperation. And we see elements of this. We know that the 90-minute phone call that he had with Putin and the meeting that took place in Riyadh both addressed issues related to energy security. The United States and Russia are two of the world's leading oil and gas producers. And rather than view each other in a strategic competition that is a zero-sum game, they're talking about how they can work together to manage energy prices so that you have stability in the energy market. This is the kind of conversation that's never taken place between the United States and Russia. Normally it takes place between the United States and Saudi Arabia. But they're even going beyond that. Trump is breaking the paradigm of what normally constitutes security guarantees. Traditionally, security guarantees are military based, saying, look, we will put troops on your soil. We'll commit so much military resources to provide military backup for you in case of anything bad happening. And Trump's saying, we don't want to do the military thing anymore in Europe. What we're looking at is economic relationships that are so expansive that they become de facto security guarantees, that by locking ourselves in economically, we can't afford to have a war that will be disruptive, that alone becomes the guarantee. And so we saw Trump, and I remember the reaction of everybody when this first came out. I want to have a vested interest in Ukraine's $350 or $500 billion rare earth mineral market. And everybody, look at Trump. He's a colonial expansionist. He's this, he's that. He's horrible. He sucks. All he wants to do is economically rape Ukraine. And I'm like, guys, you don't even begin to see what he's doing here. You know who did see it? Vladimir Putin. Because yesterday, Vladimir Putin came up and said, hey, conversation you have with Ukraine, that $500 billion thing, we got $7 trillion worth of rare earth minerals, and we'd like to cooperate with you. And guess what else just happened? In Africa, the Republic of Congo said, yeah, we got a couple $1 trillion worth of rare earth minerals too. We got M23, this terrorist organization running crazy. Everything's gone insane. We'd like to have the United States, China, and Russia come and jointly exploit this together economically, and that'll become a joint security guarantee. The world is being redefined. I keep telling people, don't come at me and compare Trump to Biden, or compare Trump to Obama, or compare Trump to Bush, or anything else past. That was all deep state oriented. That was the establishment defining how America interfaced with the rules, generally through the vehicle of the rules-based international order. The Biden administration was at least honest enough when they promulgated their national security strategy document to say that the number one thing that drove America's national security was the continuation and sustainment of the rules-based international order. Trump, while he campaigned, said the greatest threat to American security is the rules-based international order. That is a deep state-driven methodology, and Trump is deconstructing it as we speak. So I will not tolerate. I have zero patience for people who want to play the game of, yeah, but Biden, yeah, but I don't care. And neither does Trump. He's not having that conversation. He doesn't give a damn what Biden did. He's saying that's over. We have reset ground zero in terms of how America defines itself. We are deconstructing. If you don't think the deep state is being deconstructed, try and pick up the phone call, all you deep state journalists and call your FBI contacts and your CIA contacts and your national security contacts. You know, the ones that leaked all that information to you they are shredding documents as we speak, lawyering up because they're going to jail. Every single one of them. They are a threat to the national security of the United States as defined by the sitting president of the United States. And he is not relying upon, you know, the James Comeys and the Christopher Wrays and the deep state FBI establishment, or the, you know, all those Department of Justice attorneys that would, you know, hear a president say something and then do nothing, because that's what the deep state does. He fired them all. They're gone. They're finished. Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, they're coming in, man, and they are running the FBI. It's over for the deep state. Finished. And as a result, how we interface with the world is completely new. This is something that's never. I just got off. I was just I just did a conference call with a think tank in Russia talking about Africa relations. And they were shocked what I said, but they were smiling because nobody knows right now what Trump's policy on Africa is. And I told them that not even Trump knows, but I can guarantee one thing: it won't be anything like past policies. And so we are literally looking at a completely new paradigm on how Trump interfaces with the world. And this relationship with Russia, and there's no guarantee this is going to work, Jamal. I mean, this, you know, we still have to solve the Ukraine problem. You know, I'm optimistic, but, you know, I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch.
Right, of course.
But this approach is fundamentally different than anything we've ever seen before in the history of the United States. I mean, everybody who's alive today understand this. No matter what you think of Donald Trump, when the history books are written and your grandchildren read about this, you were alive during this period of time. This is as historic as it gets. This is about like being alive during the original American Revolution, during the American Civil War, during FDR's transformation. This is fundamental in nature, what's taking place. And if you don't respect that, then I can't respect your analysis, because your analysis won't be founded on reality. If you continue to assess the United States from the framework of the Biden administration, the Obama administration, what came before, that United States no longer exists. People maybe haven't woken up to that fact yet. That United States no longer exists. You've been watching the Middle East for some time now. I know you have, because I've talked to you about it. Yeah. And the major military command in the Middle East is Central Command. We've been watching Europe. We've talked about it. And the major military command in Europe is European Command. That's the American command that runs NATO. We also have, out of Stuttgart, Germany, Africa Command. Ask the Pentagon how much money is being allocated to sustain these three commands going forward.
They don't know.
No, they're cutting them. They're cutting them. They're eliminating them. They're reducing them. The United States is no longer playing the game. The two priorities for the Pentagon as they move forward with their 8% reduction per year for the next 4 years. That's a 40% reduction in the Pentagon's budget without any guarantees from Russia and China that they're going to do the same. Trump has said, cut it 40% in 5 years, 8% every year. And right off the bat, the cuts are coming from the de-emphasis of Central Command, European Command, Africa Command.
Wow.
The world is changing. We are focused on Homeland Security and the Pacific. That's it. And so we have to understand that this peace relationship that's being developed with Russia isn't simply to redefine U.S.-Russian relationships in the context of a security architecture that previously existed. That security architecture is gone, and a new architecture is being built. One we don't know. We haven't seen the architectural designs. We don't know what this new building is going to look like, but what I can tell you, it ain't going to look like anything like that building that just been blown up.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. I mean, I've never seen anything like this. I will say that. It has been a shift in U.S. foreign policy almost overnight that Donald Trump is taking with him. Um, as I pointed out, the negotiations, he's talking about a major deal. And as you pointed out, that deal goes beyond just ending the war in Ukraine. This is Mark Root. I want to get your take on this. So we are at the 3rd anniversary of the invasion, of the special military operation. I want to get your take on what Wright is saying.
Ukraine continues to endure with courage that does not falter, hope that does not fade, and a spirit that cannot be broken. NATO has stood with Ukraine throughout Russia's brutal war of aggression to keep the flame of freedom burning. We have kept Ukraine strong by providing arms, equipment, and training. The bravery and resilience of the Ukrainian people are an inspiration to the world. NATO will continue to support and stand with Ukraine and help it through the challenges ahead to ensure this war can end with a just and lasting peace.
I'm going to stop there in this clip because my tolerance for listening to these guys is very low, if I'm being bluntly honest with you. Give me a take on that. This idea that, well, we're going to stand with them regardless. The U.S. is clearly taking a different tack, saying to make this clear to the audience. Yesterday, in the United Nations, a UN resolution was being crafted by Europe. The U.S. refused to sign on to that resolution condemning Russia for the invasion, meaning they would not sign on to it. Europe is isolated. If the U.S. puts out a resolution effectively saying we want a peaceful settlement to the war, most of the world will most likely sign on to it. Europe will most likely abstain. They're isolated. He is saying this, wearing no clothes to say it. If America is not backing him, right? I mean, like, what am I missing in this? Europe, I guess the question is, does Europe really have the capability to support this war if the U.S. pulls out? And is this just posturing by the NATO representative, knowing full well that his capability of doing anything is undercut if America pulls out?
Jamal, remember, this is Trump's 2nd time being elected. When he came in the first time, after winning the 2016 election, our NATO allies in Europe worked with the deep state, with the establishment, many of whom were brought into the Trump administration to nullify Trump's predilection towards dramatic departure from the norm. And as a result, Trump, got NATO, said, well, you have to, more, we need more from you, more defense spending, more this, more that, etc. I've always said, and I believe that my analysis is accurate, that NATO is an extension of American foreign policy prerogatives. And the same thing with the European Union. The European Union is an economic arm of the United States that we control through various processes, including the G7 and the G20. I just told you earlier that the deep state is dead. So why don't we view this? The deep state is Dr. Frankenstein. Europe is Frankenstein's monster. We have killed Dr. Frankenstein. He no longer exists. But the monster is roaming the world confused. It doesn't know what to do. It's going to die. It doesn't realize that because it's a brain dead monster. So it's on full automatic, and it will continue to pump out empty speeches that mean nothing. They will continue to posture in a way as if they are backed by a deep state that no longer exists. But one by one, the deficiencies of Europe and NATO will come to the forefront. I said when Mark Rutte became the Secretary General that I believed he would be the last Secretary General of NATO. And I am very confident in that analysis. NATO is a fundamentally flawed organization that has no future because it has allowed itself, thanks to the deep state, to define its central mission as being focused on confronting a Russian adversary. And if the United States, the most powerful and important member of NATO, without which NATO cannot exist, has decided that Russia is no longer an adversary, that we will have a more rational relationship based upon cooperation, not confrontation, then NATO no longer has any justification to exist. and will fall apart because no European nation or group of European nations can afford to sustain NATO in its current posture. But Mark Rutte, poor little Frankenstein's monster, doesn't know any better. So he goes out and he issues stupid speech after stupid speech, just like Kallas, the foreign minister, stupid speech.
Ursula von der Leyen.
Von der Leyen, stupid speech after stupid speech. Now, there are the minions of Frankenstein out there who are trying, Macron, he can think. And he's like, I got to fly to Washington and I've got to hold Donald Trump's knee in a very disturbing manner and make secret signs and try and convince him that what he's doing is wrong. And if you saw Trump just could care less. At one point in time, Macron is actively leaning away from Trump because there's no agreement between these two men. Trump could care. Look at the
one, I always think it's good to.
I'm sorry, Scott. I was running it in the background. Please continue. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just look at Trump's absolute disdain. I mean, this is a man he's not engaged. He doesn't care what Macron is saying. He's going through the motions here, and he will do the same thing with Starmer. What did Macron get coming out of this? Nothing concrete at all. And he knows that Trump is just going to move forward. The most important meeting is the one that's going to take place very soon between the foreign ministers. And that meeting is, to set up an even larger meeting between Putin and Trump that will solidify this grand new relationship. So, I mean, like you, my stomach is turned when I see Mark Rutte, Ursula von der Leyen, Kallas, and others speak. But I've learned to, coat my stomach with the Pepto-Bismol of reality, which is these are simply Frankenstein's monsters who don't know any better because they were programmed to do this by a deep state that no longer exists. Europe cannot sustain the conflict in Ukraine on its own. That is a 100% guarantee, and even the Europeans know that. You keep hearing Starmer and Macron talk about we have this military force, but the caveat's always with an American backstop. And Trump just said, there ain't going to be an American backstop. You guys are truly on your own, which means you're wasting my time. There will be a settlement on Ukraine. That settlement will be crafted between the United States and Russia. Ukraine will have no part in this, and neither will Europe.
Zelensky recently, the Rada, refused to, let's say, recognize him as leader of that country. I mean, as you know, martial law has been declared. Zelensky has made this argument that, well, we can't have elections because we're in the middle of a war. And when European leaders go for the anniversary, they go with this idea of, okay, well, Trump is saying that Zelensky is a dictator, so we are going to get the Rada, the Ukrainian parliament, to validate Zelensky's rulership, his leadership status. The Rada refused to do it. They voted down the measure that pointed that Zelensky was still in charge. That looks horrible. So is Zelensky going to be able to be an impediment for this? There was an article in the New York Times, one of the leaks out of the Trump administration said Zelensky should take his money and go to France. Which is funny. Yeah, it is funny, right? Is he an impediment to this? Is he going to be dictated his terms? Meaning, is it going to be Trump signs a deal with Putin and it is given to Zelensky to sign? Or is Zelensky going to be able to, let's say, be a fly in the ointment in this? Because he seems to want to stay and wants to be a part of something associated with this. I mean, Zelensky has gone so far as to say, well, yeah, I know I passed a law saying that we can't negotiate, but Zelensky, can negotiate. Is he a fly in the ointment?
My understanding is that the Rada didn't vote down the measure. They just failed to get enough votes for the measure, which means the measure did not pass. And yet this morning, they actually held a vote where there was sufficient votes received. So
there was heavy browbeating. That was some serious browbeating overnight. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think the point is that Zelensky is a dictator, and what happened is those parliamentarians who failed to appear for the vote were visited by men in uniforms who said, "You can vote or you can go to the front. Your choice." And they went, "Oh, we vote," and so they voted. But it's a meaningless vote. It doesn't change anything. As you said, it was all theater for the European audience. Zelensky knows that he is the problem, not the solution, and that eventually he will have to step aside. He's trying to leverage his continued role as president to get as much as possible. And I think the realization is that he's going to get nothing. He has folded on the issue of NATO, saying that he could step down as president, even if there is no NATO guarantee. But nobody's listening to him anymore. The United States isn't listening to him anymore. He is useful at this point in time because we don't know what's going to replace him. I think that, he will be allowed to stay in power while the United States and Russia nail down their broader framework. And the reason is this: we know that Zelensky is a failed leader, a rejected leader. So by keeping him in, he's incapable of becoming a fly in the ointment because he's going to be eliminated. That is the 100% guarantee in this whole process, is Zelensky will be eliminated sooner, very soon. But if we eliminate him now, before a Russian-American agreement has been nailed down, now you have a literal fly in the ointment, because a new leader is going to come in and say, "Oh, invite me to the table. Invite me. I'm the guy that can talk to you. I'm not Zelensky. I'm the Ukrainian leader, the legitimate one with an election. You guys said you wanted me. Bring me in." That's literally the fly in the ointment. And neither Russia nor the United States wants that at this point in time. So I think Zelensky is going to be allowed to stay until the United States and Russia frame out their agreement. And once they do that, then they say, "Get the hell out of here." Boom, that's it on the table. Bring in the new guy, sign it, we're done. I think that's what's going to happen, because it doesn't make any sense to get rid of Zelensky and then bring in what we said we wanted, which is a new legitimate Ukrainian leadership, and then ignore them. We can ignore Zelensky without penalty.
Oh, right. Right. Oh, that is such a good point. His illegitimacy works to our best interests. Oh, that is such a good point. I am curious on something else. This idea that if the U.S. president can't accept the Russian terms for political reasons, let's say Trump doesn't care about Ukraine, that this is Joe Biden's war. And what about the possibility of Trump allowing the Ukrainian military to fail on the battlefield? I think that's horrible. But if, let's say, Trump can't accept the Russian position, whatever that is the secondary option for Trump, let him fail. They'll come to the table when they fail on the battlefield, meaning I'm going to get what I want either way. I'm going to blame Joe Biden for this war. If the Ukrainian military, or if there is something that is inhibiting me from getting a deal, them failing on the battlefield is also sufficient for me. And I'm going to still blame Joe Biden for it. Like, meaning, is there a plan B? Is there a situation where the U.S. president can't accept whatever deal is coming out of Russia for reasons associated with, well, we can't be this close to Russia? Like, how do you see plan B in this?
I don't see a plan B. I don't think Trump is planning to fail. He's unique in that way. Most normal leaders would say, I need a plan B, a backup plan. Right. Trump's not planning on failing. Look, you say we can't afford to get this close to Russia. We just voted with Russia and China on a Security Council resolution against France and Great Britain.
Yeah.
Now, they abstained, but we voted for it. And we refused to sign on to the anti-Russian vote that went before the General Assembly, promoted by Ukraine and France. And we put forward we are voting with Russia as we speak in the United Nations. I'll just say that one more time so everybody understands. We are voting with Russia, side by side Russia, in concert with Russia in the United Nations. That hasn't happened since 1991, 1990, 1991, and it hasn't happened since. So the idea that, we're afraid to get too close to Russia, that's just that ship has sailed.
Yeah.
We want to get very close to Russia. look, when Trump was asked about May Day, May 9th, Victory Day, they said, would you be there? He said, oh, it'd be nice to be there, but it's too soon, too close. But I will be there. I will be in Moscow, and Putin will be in the United States. These decisions have already been made. When you say, will Trump allow the Ukrainian military to fail? It's failing.
Yeah.
I mean, again, one of the key aspects of the Kellogg peace plan was an immediate freezing of the front line and a ceasefire before anything else happens. Well, that it's not happening. Every day we speak, the Russians are gaining more territory, capturing more towns, destroying more Ukrainian equipment. And you don't hear a peep out of the Trump administration. You don't hear them saying, oh, you got to stop that, Russia, because that's part of the plan. You see, they basically have told Russia without telling Russia, get done what you need to get done. Do what you need to do. Establish whatever you need to establish, so that when we are ready to sign this framework and we have to talk about a ceasefire, that you'll be willing to accept a ceasefire. So I don't think there's a plan B. I don't think Trump is planning on failing. I think he has sent the signal to his negotiators, make this happen. That's the marching order that's been put out there. That doesn't mean that it's a guaranteed of success. We know that life is that way. There's no guarantee. But Trump doesn't appear, if you listen to Steve Wickoff, who has appeared out of nowhere to become the new Steve Kellogg, he's just basically saying this war started, it wasn't Russia's fault. I mean, the whole mindset is completely different. Russia didn't start this. No pressures were put on Russia. Russia was reacting. We sort of understand why Russia did this. Yeah, I mean, I love Jake Tapper's face, because Jake Tapper can't bear to hear anything that is realistic and common sense based. It's not propaganda. But the United States has already conceded to Russia almost everything Russia wanted. The devil is in the details. But the United States isn't going to sit there and allow Zelensky to screw this up. Denazification is something that will happen, but the answer to that is through constitutional changes that outlaw these right-wing political parties. There will be an election in Ukraine, and I think the United States understands that Russia has a greater say in this election than, say, Europe. Europe is the enemy. Europe is the problem. So a lot of these issues will resolve themselves. The devil is in the details, but I think the details are being written as we speak. And the offset, because everybody keeps saying, well, Trump is conceding too much to Russia. But the offset is Trump to say, guys, we just gained access to $7 trillion worth of rare earth minerals, that it will fundamentally redefine America's economy going forward. Imagine if he told the American people, I'm just spitballing with you here, but if he said, we've made enough money off of these rare earth minerals that we can eliminate the income tax, that we can, cut back dramatically property tax. You hear people talking about that. I'm just spitballing here. James Carville famously said in 1992, when he was managing Bill Clinton's campaign, it's the economy, stupid. Donald Trump knows this better than apparently any other politician out there. And that's why his solutions to global problems aren't military based, but economic based. And the transition that will happen in terms of income streams, income distribution, etc., is going to be revolutionary in scope and scale. What you thought America was will never again be.
So you think Trump is doing this mostly for economic reasons? That, like, when I look at this, I think to myself, all right, Trump recognizes that the weaponization of the dollar has been counterproductive. He recognizes that BRICS nations, especially with Russia being, let's say, one of the main proponents of the BRICS nations, is pushing very hard for this idea of de-dollarization, because it adversely affected Russia's capability of functioning around the world. Basically, you've used the weapon as a dollar. The dollar is a weapon, so we're going to get rid of that weapon that you're effectively using. Trump comes in, recognizes this, and responds to that reality of, okay, well, we can't lose the dollar. We have $35 trillion in debt. We can't lose the reserve currency. We need to do something to slow down or prevent all of these other nations from going in this direction of de-dollarization. Is that how you see this too? That whereas Europe is looking at this as a military issue, and you have some people in the US looking at this as a military issue, Trump is saying, dude, we have economic realities that we have to deal with, that we have effectively hobbled ourselves or damaged ourselves going forward, that we need to resolve in an economic way, not a militaristic way. Is that how you see this? Also, that is the way I view this, or that's the lens to which I view this, and the rationale that I have for why Trump is responding in the way that Donald Trump is responding. How do you view it?
No, you're absolutely right. He is de-emphasized. Look, as we speak, the Pentagon has been instructed to, as I previously said,
40%.
to stand down or reduce significantly European Command, Africa Command, and Central Command.
Right.
All right. So Trump isn't looking for a military solution. I mean, traditionally what you do is you say, we're going to beef up CENTCOM. We're sending a division into Europe. We're going to make Africa special operations front line. He's not saying that. He's saying, no, cut it down. And we're looking at the economy. It's interesting, because, Trump was very aggressive on BRICS.
Right.
If you go after de-dollarization, I will hit you with 150% tariffs. You will not be allowed to do this. And then when BRICS went, okay, he went, I won. I destroyed BRICS. But he didn't ever listen to this. I mean, again, or maybe he did. I mean, we have to remember that Trump sometimes keeps things so simple that we forget that maybe he actually has a better understanding of the issues than we give him credit for. Vladimir Putin, back in October of last year at the Kazan summit of BRICS, held up a BRICS note, a 100 BRICS, I don't know what they call the note, and said, this is a notional thing of money. But he said it doesn't exist yet. But everybody's like, oh God, look, BRICS is trying to put money out there. See, Putin's not stupid either. He's clever like a fox. Because what Putin said is, we don't want to do this. So you see, we like the dollar. Dollar's convenient. Dollar works. But when you cut us off from the dollar, we have no choice but to look for alternatives.
Right.
Either in the form of a joint currency or structures in which we use our own national currencies. But these are very sloppy. They don't work. They're not convenient. They cost money. They create friction, and friction is bad. You need lubricant, not friction, to make engines work. And so Trump coming in and going, you can't get rid of the dollar. Well, the counter to that is, are you going to let us use the dollar?
Right. Exactly.
And the answer is, yes, he
Yes.
is. And there's the answer to the game. The debate's over. BRICS will never talk again about de-dollarization and all that because Trump has fundamentally changed. He said, you're going to use the dollar. And they went, we're going to use the dollar. Now Trump views this as a victory because he has defined BRICS as a vehicle for de-dollarization. BRICS has never viewed itself as a vehicle of de-dollarization. BRICS has viewed itself as a vehicle of economic empowerment for the global South so that they have a voice that is equivalent to the G8, the G20, and things of that nature. And Trump saying, okay, again, there's going to be a meeting probably around year 2. It's my projection here. Could be wrong. But the meeting is going to be between Trump, Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, and Modi, the big four. Europe's not going to be at the table. And they're going to sit down together and go, how do we make this work? And I would bet you that maybe in year 3, Trump will be invited to speak at the BRICS summit, not as a member of BRICS. The United States isn't going to join BRICS, but as a collaborator with BRICS, where BRICS is no longer viewed as an adversary to bring down the American empire. That's the way everybody, including myself, viewed, because as long as you had a Biden administration pursuing a rules-based international order, then BRICS was in an adversarial relationship with the United States. But the revolution is here, Jamal. It's over. The rules-based international order has been put 6 feet into the ground, and Donald Trump saying, We ain't doing that anymore. We're looking on how we can cooperate with the world. And the dollar, you don't want to use, if you don't use the dollar, I'll destroy you. But if you use the dollar, we'll be friends. And it's purely economically. Why? Because it's the economy, stupid. The only
Scott,
thing the American people care about in the end is what's in their pocket, in their bank, that they can put a roof over their head, feed.
yes.
That's all they care about. And if Donald Trump can give that to, see, people in the past would scare the American people. You're going to lose all this, lose democracy, unless we build up the biggest military in the world. Trump's not playing that game without even entering into discussions with our adversaries. He said, cut it by 40%. Because he's not playing that game anymore. He's playing the economic cooperation game. And that'll bring far more security than the military dominance game ever brought.
Scott, I agree mostly with you. I strongly disagree with this idea that the BRICS nations, just because Trump comes in, are all of a sudden going to be like, okay, we're going to stop de-dollarization. We're going to pull back. I don't believe that at all. I think they would listen to Trump. I think they would give and tell him any and everything that he wants to hear. But I think the horse is out the barn. I don't know.
De-dollarization's dead. They're not talking about it anymore. Brazil's running the summit this year, and they said it's not on the table. They took it off the table. Modi said it's never going to be on the table. And Trump and Putin is saying, we don't want it. And Xi Jinping's going, we don't want it either. Because they can't respond to it. They can't come up with an alternative. There is no alternative to the dollar.
I don't know how countries look at U.S. behavior with the dollar and the way that the U.S. has used it as a weapon and has done so for multiple administrations, not just one. Joe Biden might have been the worst aspect of it, but it was being used.
Didn't I say you can't? You're guilty of what I said you can't do. What am I guilty of? You just brought the past in, and you said you're judging Donald Trump based upon the past. Would Joe Biden have ever stood up and said, we're going to make the dollar usable to you?
I know, Scott, but there's a continuity in regards to governments. It's not like one administration comes in and all of a sudden the continuity goes away.
The revolution made the continuity go away. It's over. Finished.
Right. And you believe that Russia, China, all of these other countries are looking at this one administration and saying, all right, the revolution is here. Everything is great. We can move forward. America has changed its position for the foreseeable future. I am not certain of that. And if I am one of those leaders, I am thinking to myself, this could change tomorrow.
They're guarded. But again, I'm just telling you, I've done a lot of research into de-dollarization. No major BRICS country is excited about it because you can't do it. It actually is the thing that was going to destroy BRICS, because they don't know how to do the interaction. They can't make it work. And now you have Trump coming in saying, if you do this at your moment of greatest weakness, because BRICS is not strong right now.
Right.
They are growing. At your moments of greatest weakness, I'm going to destroy you with tariffs that you can't afford. And BRICS is going, we can't do that. But Putin has said it. Putin is a leader of BRICS who said, we have no interest in de-dollarization. None whatsoever. We didn't walk away from the dollar. You pushed us away from the dollar. So Donald Trump's solution is welcome back to the dollar, baby.
Yeah.
And the point I'm trying to make is, okay, if I'm Putin now, and I had this conversation with Russian officials at their embassy the other night. I was there for it's not official. I'm not an American.
Yeah, Darwin told me. Yeah.
Just this strange little conversation. But they were like you. Jury's still out, man.
Exactly.
America does this stuff. And I said, guys, the revolution is here. You're like, well, I say, really? What constitutes, when you think about the deep state and the thing that holds it together, what constitutes that? Remember Chuck Schumer? The intelligence community's got 6 ways from Sunday to screw Donald Trump. It doesn't. The intelligence community doesn't exist anymore the way it used to. They're done. They're finished. Everybody's been fired. The structures have been eliminated. There is new leadership in place that doesn't have anything to do with the past leadership. The Department of Justice is finished. You know those FBI agents that came into my house? Every single attorney in the Northern District of New York that authorized that is fired, finished, gone. Their careers are over. And the FBI agents that came in at my house may lose their jobs as well. The deep state is over, finished, done. You couldn't rebuild it if you wanted to because it's in total disarray. And this is what I tried to tell the Russians. I don't know what the future is going to be, but I do know what it's not going to be. Vladimir Putin once said that American presidents can campaign and make promises and promises, but then when they become president, they sit down in the Oval Office and men in black suits and dark ties show up with briefcases and tell them what reality is, and they don't do anything. The men in black suits no longer exist. They no longer exist. The deep state no longer exists. It's being defunded. It's being disrupted. It's being destroyed. And it's not theory. I'm talking about reality. Look at what's happening in Washington, D.C. It is absolute panic, absolute chaos. If the rumors are true, and they're coming from several responsible sources, generals, FBI agents, CIA agents have been caught shredding documents.
I heard that. Yeah.
They're going to jail forever. Why are they shredding documents? Because the deep state is a criminal cabal that has been conspiring against the American people for decades. And Trump has said it is over, finished, done. He knows why his first 4 years didn't succeed, because the deep state held him down, constrained him, stabbed him in the back. And then the next 4 years, they tried to destroy his life. So there's a little bit of revenge put into this, which I'm not exactly happy about, but the revenge allows Trump to become singularly focused on what the threat is. And the threat is the deep state. And he has spent 8 years identifying every facet of it. Why do you think Doge exists? Is it empowerment for Elon Musk? Nope. Doge exists because there's nothing in the system that would allow the identification of corruption. If he went to the inspector generals, this is why he fired them all. If he had turned it over to the inspector generals, I want an audit. The audit would go on for 20 years and they would find nothing. He said, you're all fired. You're finished. Brought in Elon Musk, who brought in a bunch of 20-year-old punks who are sitting there going through it, and everybody's scared to death. And they're lying. Oh, my private information is. No. Trust me, your private information's already been violated. Okay, let's not pretend that some 20-year-old kid from Doge is going to violate it. It's been violated by the FBI, NSA, CIA, by PayPal, by everybody, by Google. You have no private information. What they're doing is destroying the deep state. They're identifying the corruption, and only an outside agency could do it. Because if you turn to the deep state and say, police yourself, that's like telling the corrupt police department, hey, why don't you make Sergeant so-and-so, the most corrupt cop of them all, he's in charge of reforming the police department. I mean, it's, let's say you have a police department in the Deep South that's heavily racist. Well, we're going to pick Bull Connors. Hey, Bull Connors, you're going to be in charge of reforming that police. Yeah, I got this one, boys. All right, let them all up. No, you
Scott,
don't have the racist go against racism.
This is the greatest, let's say, viewing of Doge that I've ever heard. This is not my view of Doge. I don't have this this view that Musk is out there. I'm just doing God's work. I'm just working to the betterment of the country. I don't have that view of Musk. I don't have that view of Trump. I agree with you on the geopolitical stage and the movements that Donald Trump is making on that stage. I strongly put to you, though, that these organizations are there to fleece the government, not necessarily to do something to the betterment of everyday regular Americans. I don't believe for a moment that Doge is out there working to my best interests. I think they're working to their own. I could be wrong. At the end of this 4 years, we could be in a situation where I'm like, hey, Scott was right. I'm completely wrong.
What's a man who is already worth $360 billion, an unbelievable amount of money. We can't even comprehend it.
Just can't fathom.
What possible motivation? He's at the point right now where money doesn't matter anymore.
Money matters.
Money doesn't matter to him. It doesn't.
I don't know why you think that it doesn't matter. The man is $350 billion. Meaning, if it didn't matter, he wouldn't have $350 billion. He got that money because he cared about the fact that he wanted more money. And if you were like
the man who bought Twitter and just said, I don't care about profitability. I am taking this and transforming it into a social media platform that will become more powerful than mainstream media, which it is today. Revolutionary. Right. Everybody who heard that business model early on went, no, you can't. Who would put $40 billion in knowing you're going to lose money? He went, I ain't going to lose money, first of all. And second of all, it has to be done to break the back. See, Elon Musk is in the business of breaking the back of corrupt entities.
Scott, Elon Musk bought Twitter for the same reason that Bloomberg bought Bloomberg News or Bezos bought the Washington Post. Rich people realize that they want to have some ability to influence the public dialogue and public discourse. Twitter was a perfect organ for him to do it. Meaning it wasn't like Twitter, he's doing this for my benefit or for free speech. He wanted his own speech. Elon Musk have gone after people on that same platform that is supposed to be a free speech platform when they deviated from the things that Elon Musk wanted to talk about. I've seen him do it. I don't have this egalitarian view of Elon Musk and Donald Trump. I do agree with you that on a geopolitical stage, they're doing God's work in regards to ending these wars. You are in full agreement. When it gets to domestic priorities, I don't buy it. I just don't buy it.
What's the alternative? Let the deep state continue?
Oh, I'm not saying I like it either way. So don't get me wrong. I don't feel like I have a dog in the hunt.
We all have a dog in the hunt. We all, because we're American citizens, we all have a dog in the hunt. Yeah, this impacts us fundamentally. And I'm not sitting there saying that your concerns are not well grounded and legitimate. Yeah. Of course they are. What I'm saying is we're in the middle of a revolution. A revolution, by definition, is the total destruction of what was there. What's replacing it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be good.
No, that's fair.
It's perfect. Fair. Okay, but I am here to tell you that Elon Musk is a revolutionary. You may disagree with what he's trying to do. Vladimir Lenin was a revolutionary. We may not be happy with the Bolshevik model that came after the czars, but what we can agree upon is that the revolution destroyed Tsarist Russia.
What came before?
Yeah.
You are perfectly right. And I do agree with you on that front. Scott Ritter. Scott Ritter is a former UN weapons inspector. He's a weapons of mass destruction whistleblower. You can follow Scott on Twitter, no less, and you can follow him on Telegram. Scott, is there anywhere else people can find you? I just want to make sure.
I think the big one is, scottritter.com is the website, and I have a Substack there that people can subscribe, free subscription. But if you want to, donate, you can make it a paid subscription, but there's no pressure to. I have a new Telegram channel that is a subscription-based channel, the Russia House with Scott Ritter. It's cutting-edge stuff, guys. We're talking about a transformation of U.S.-Russian policies, and we discussed that in the Russia House. And then my X channel is, I post things on there, and I'm accused of trying to stir up trouble on X. Apparently, everybody questions your motives. If you dare put something, I thought the whole purpose of X was to, provoke confrontation and conversation. But apparently, if you're too successful at provoking conversation, then you're accused of I don't know what. But I enjoy it. I get up every morning before everybody else does, because my dogs wake me up, and then I spend about 2 hours trolling X just to generate conversation. Then I come back to it later in the day to see how many hornets' nests I kicked up. So I think that's what X is very good at doing is getting this dialogue, this debate, this discussion. There's some parts of X that need to be policed up, but through this kicking of the hornet's nests, you get stung a little bit, but you also learn a lot. And I do that as well. I read Telegram, I provoke on X, and I publish things on Substack, and you can find it all at scottritter.com.
Oh, there's nothing wrong with that. Scott, man, thank you for this. I always appreciate it. You have a good one. Be safe.
Thank you, too.
All right. I want to bring in my man, the one and only Ted Rall. Ted, I apologize for the delay. Ted Rall is a highly acclaimed cartoonist, political commentator. He is also on the TMI show that takes place 10 a.m. to 12 immediately after the show is over with. So definitely check out Ted on his channel. How you doing, my man? You doing okay?
I'm good, and no worries about being late if it's for Scott Ritter. I mean, he's an
I,
American hero.
look,
He's
man,
an American hero. I mean, he's an
I
icon.
appreciate Scott, but I think he has a very lovely view of Musk that I don't share. He has this like, oh, Musk is doing it for America. No, he's not. No, he's not. It just stop. It's like, no, he's not.
Well, maybe I would say in between. I mean, so he may think he's doing God's work. Look, honestly, I think a lot of people who we think of as villains of history thought they were doing good things. Jefferson Davis thought he was doing good things.
I know,
Adolf Hitler thought he was doing good things.
No, he did not. No,
Hitler did not. He did. He thought he was saving Germany.
Sending a letter to thousands of people saying, "Hey, what do you do?" it's like as if you're going to get a million, like you're going to get 2 million letters read about what they do for their job. Come on.
It's incredibly douchey. And here's the thing. Okay, so you get one of those letters. You work. It's like it's not your job to explain that to the this whatever this Doge thing is, right?
Yeah, they're not even my boss.
Your boss is supposed to know what you do. That's. I mean, I had a boss do that where it wasn't her, it was the whole company. We all had to fill out these stupid forms after I'd been there for 3 years. And it's like, oh, please list half hour by half hour what you do. And I literally, people will not believe me, but for the 4:30 half hour, I wrote back filling out this stupid fucking form. Yeah. And I mean, the thing is, it's kind of like, it's so insulting. What this episode really highlights is just like, honestly, morale and leadership come from the top. And Silicon Valley is absolutely the worst in terms of management, morale building, leadership. They know a lot of things. They know innovation, but they do not know how to manage people. And that's like well established, within those structures and hierarchies. I mean, they leave behind a trail of bitterness and tears among their former employees, even at, say, Google, where people like really want to work. Former Googlers, they tell horror stories.
It's because from our take, like as a software engineer, this stuff is mechanical. Mm-hmm. And that if we can build programs and those type of things, okay, well, people can also be put into those categories. Well, people aren't that way. No. Like many of the people that you meet in software are pods, or I used to call them pods. And the reason why I used to call them pods is because they were like Elon Musk. They were oddballs. They weren't, I don't know Elon Musk, so I can't entirely say that. I can say, though, that when you're working with other people in the tech field, we build software programs that organize reality. And we may think that human beings can also be put into those boxes when we're thinking of that stuff. Human beings don't exactly work like a software program. Mm-mm. And so if you're dealing with Google, if you're dealing with these tech companies, you're going to get a hierarchy. Look at what Twitter does. Twitter, my account was stolen. And I went through all of the things that you're supposed to go through, and none of it worked. And not just none of it worked. They were like, yeah, just file this. Somebody will get to you at some point. And then the person gets to you, and they never do. Or when they do, it's something that you've said 20 times over to other devices that they've put up. That is the way they think about the world.
They try to automate everything.
Yes.
And the thing is, what's interesting is 90% of the time, 90% of situations can be automated, right? I mean, like, AAA, let's say. What are most of their calls? I got a flat tire, ran out of gas, my radiator overheated. Probably there's like 7 or 8 things that most motorists suffer from. Oh, I had a fender bender. I'm stuck. The car won't start, right? That's about it. But the thing is, you still need a person on the phone to understand, because that 10%, they have a situation that's unique. Yes. I'm in a flooded place. The water's rising. I need a rescue. Or my car's got like an electrical shock when I touch the trunk. I don't know what's going on. I mean, those things you can't just have like you can automate the whole thing. If you have a flat tire, press 1. It's like, that's not good
Yeah,
enough.
you need a person at a certain point, and people want a person. Like if I'm calling Social Security, if I'm calling the government for anything, I want a person to talk to. Like you feel like you want to feel that you've been acknowledged in some way. And robots.
It's also more efficient because the human brain is faster than AI.
Yes.
I used to live on Long Island, and the cable company there was privately owned. And you could literally, it was the most amazing thing when I moved there. When you call the cable company for whatever reason, like you have an outage, literally there's no phone tree. It's literally like, hello, Cablevision. And you're like, and it's an American, a native American speaking person. And that's not a racist thing. That is a cultural thing. People in South Asia or whatever are just as smart, if not smarter than we are. But, there's things that they just don't get because they're in a different culture. Just like there's things I would not get about India if I were, be trained really well. So it's like, I remember one time I had a problem at the bank. I deposited a check. It was denominated in British pounds. It went through as US dollars. Well, there's a difference.
There's a major difference.
Back then, there was a big difference. It was like pounds were worth twice as much. So I kept trying to explain, they say, but we see the deposit. Yeah, but it's the wrong currency. They just didn't understand. So it's just stuff like that. Yeah, you can't rationalize all these things, and also I might be able to buy the Doge model if, let's say, they had put in a team and shadowed all these government agencies for, say, a year and sat there. We're gonna have a desk in there. We're gonna watch what you all do and sit in on the meetings and read the memos and then like at the end of the year, we're gonna make some recommendations like McKinsey would do and say, we think this could go or whatever.
That I would get. I might even be okay with that.
I might be okay with that. That would still be like, honestly, that would be a rough cut. That wouldn't be like a really great way to do it, but it would be like better than this. I mean, literally they were firing people weeks within the administration. There's no way they could know who they were firing or whether they were firing the right people or getting rid of the right agencies. They couldn't know that. It's not possible.
1,000% agree. I like this idea that, they're doing this for the benefit of America. No, they're not. I'm sorry, they're not. I have been fascinated with this inability of Democrats to acknowledge that they've lost the working class.
Oh, Jesus.
I've been fascinated by that. And this took place on MSNBC. Now, I have not watched this clip, so this reaction is going to be new for both of us. I'm going to get your take first.
Excellent.
I've seen this guy. I think this is David Sirota. And he goes on MSNBC. And
full disclosure, I know David. We used to work together.
You?
We used to work together. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this is
he's a good guy. He's a very good guy.
He's a lefty. I give him credit for that. So this is him.
How is he making gains with working class voters? How did he manage to pull that off?
It's a great question. I think there are two factors. I think inflation, he was able to make an anti-incumbent argument. And let's remember, in presidential races, I mean, we've had multiple elections where the incumbent party, both in Congress, by the way, and at the presidential level, have been thrown out. Americans keep voting for change. They're clearly unhappy. But I also think it's worth saying that the Democratic Party for years has not embraced a kind of populist message. The Democratic Party has been allowed itself to be the party that pushed through NAFTA, President Clinton. It was the party that helped deregulate Wall Street, which created the financial crisis. The Obama administration promised to deal with that and then took hope and change and made it more of the same by taking all of that energy promising to crack down on Wall Street and turning it into a massive Wall Street bailout while millions of people got foreclosed on. The point being that the Democratic Party has not portrayed itself as a populist alternative to right-wing populism, creating effectively the conditions for a fake populist like Donald Trump to win.
Give me a take, Ted. For one, I think he's right. But what are your thoughts?
Well, David, also a little context, right? He is a big fan of Bernie Sanders. He's from the Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party, and look, I think he obviously he's right, but that's only this analysis, this conversation, and is only part of the problem that the Democrats are facing. They're addicted to corporate money. And because of that, they can't embrace causes or issues that are important to working class Americans. Culturally, they've migrated away from the working class, and I don't just mean like, you know, they don't follow NASCAR. You know, I mean, they're, you know, it's like they're situated on the coasts, right? So the mentality, the you know, the ability to talk to people. I mean, you know, David and I are both from like flyover country, right? So I mean, we're both intellectuals, like you are. We all deal in like the world of ideas and theory and all that. But you know, we know how to talk to normal people.
Yeah, of course.
And you know, we're from normal people. We were normal people before we got into this game, right? That's increasingly not true about people who work inside the Democratic Party hierarchy and who are making the leadership calls. You know, and I think the problem is that the Democrats are neither beast nor fowl. I mean, the first step is admitting that you have a problem. You know, I just wrote a column this week, which I'm going to release, I guess, like tomorrow, about this exact topic. And one of the quotes I came across was from the new head of the DNC. You know, he says, like, basically, I was like looking to see like what his recommendations were. The only thing he's recommending is just better and more messaging. Well,
Yes.
you know, okay, but you got to have something to message. You know, you have to have a product. When you know, Coca-Cola advertises, they have a, you know, a sugar water thing that people like the taste of, and like if you get people to pay attention to it, they might get addicted to it. That works. You know, the Democrats don't currently have that. They literally admit to themselves, we don't have a product. Their product is literally, all the Republicans suck. I agree, the Republicans suck. It's like, but you know, what are you going to do to actually change, you know, change the situation? And I think the problem really is that, like, liberal and conservative, left versus right, Democrat versus Republican, those things don't really fit, if they ever did, but they definitely no longer fit the situation that we're in. Now, it's really about haves and have-nots, and both parties represent the haves more than and nobody represents the have-nots. And so you get like MAGAism is a way to flail and for the have-nots to express their anger, their annoyance, their rage, and hope that the haves throw them a few crumbs. And then, you know, it'll be, after that fizzles, it'll be something else. It might be something on the left, another Occupy type movement. But like, the point is, the system doesn't currently have legitimate space within like the electoral system, within the media, you know, the atmosphere within the mainstream media. There's no space whatsoever for the expression of the problems of the have-nots. I mean, for example, the opioid crisis is insane and is killing hundreds of thousands of Americans. When is it ever? How often is it discussed in, like, you know, this on CBS Evening News or in the pages of the New York Times? Is there coverage? Sure, once in a blue moon, but you know, not as much coverage as there is about a million other far less important and impactful things. Yeah,
I think I agree with you. Every random blue moon it comes up, but there's never anything done about it. It's that part. It's like the masses, or the have-nots, as you call them, can express on Twitter, on social media. They can complain. I mean, this channel, we bitch and moan about the stuff. But it's like, okay, but is there anything operatively done? And it's that part. It's never anything operatively done. Margaret Kimberly was on the show, I believe, yesterday. And she pointed out how all of these COVID-era policies were gutted just before the election. So just as you're careening into an election, you've been made aware that your Medicare or your whatever has been either cut or removed because COVID is now over with. And so now we need to go back to normal, which means you need to be poor. And to make it even worse, like, that's a comparison.
And the PPP program, which is PPP program is an amazing economic experiment, or it was an amazing economic experiment. I personally knew lots of people who told me that they had never made as much money in their lives as they did not working, receiving PPP checks. And right-wing conservatives might say, well, that's ridiculous. You shouldn't pay people not to work. I say that's bullshit. The point is you need to pay people, whether it's for working or for not working. You need to put money into people's pockets so that they can spend money. We have a consumer economy.
Only way the economy works. Yeah, it's the only way the economy works.
People paid off their dets.
You want people to buy in. Like, this is Mark Frost's argument. Like, Mark Frost is a libertarian. I love the guy. And he points out, he's like, there are times where you need to be throwing money out of helicopters if it keeps the public.
That's what the PPP was for.
That's what it was for.
And
they were throwing money out of helicopters.
The fraud is not a bug. It's a feature. Because that's all goes into the underground economy. They needed to stimulate. This was like one of those, the defibrillator, right? Like, who cares if you get it's a shock to the system, but you need that because the entire thing was going to die otherwise.
Yeah. Look, I think the main thing is there's an inability for the have-nots to articulate themselves politically in a way where it is seen materially. And people seem to be flailing back and forth between political parties, not being able to get what it needs out of
because
either.
The two-party system is an artificial construct. It makes no sense at all, right? Like the whole, there's two sides to every story. No, there aren't. There's 17 sides to a lot of stories, and there's one side to a lot of stories. I mean, it's just there's the left and then there's the right, and then there's a right and a left that make no sense. How is a left pro-war, for example? How is a right populist? None of that makes sense.
Yeah, the war thing is very strange to me. I want to get into this. So the liberals have taken that anything that Donald Trump does is a problem. From my point of view, this gets to the problem of liberals. They have no value. They have no core. They are purely reflexive to whatever Donald Trump is now. Mm-hmm. And the problem with that is, as somebody pointed out, a broken clock is right twice a day. And on something that Trump may be right on, they may be wrong on. The war is one of those things. It is super bizarre to me that anybody is making this argument that we need to keep the war going because Donald Trump is trying to end the war. I was like, what, are you out of your mind? Under normal circumstances, being against a war is a good thing. Just because an ogre,
especially a war that you're not going to win, right?
That you're not going to win.
Nobody, even the most pro-Ukraine people I know, and unfortunately I'm surrounded by them.
Are you?
Yeah, it's like all my liberal Democratic friends are like, poor Ukraine. And so they are all there. It's like, nobody's like, well, hey, if you just give them another 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, 72 months, they're going to be able to beat the Russians and kick them out of every inch of what used to be Ukrainian soil. Nobody believes that, right? That's just not true. Even Emmanuel Macron, when he met yesterday with Trump, there's no way he said he said, oh, we'll send boots on the ground. By the way, as a French citizen, I doubt that's going to fly in France. But
that's not going to happen. No,
it's not going to happen. But it's I will use my tremendous political capital as the most reviled Frenchman to send my compatriots to Ukraine to die. No, that's not going to happen. And but the point is that I doubt that he was able to tell Trump, listen, you got to give Zelensky more time. We're about to turn the corner. No, we're not about to turn the corner. You're not going to. It's lost, right? And whether or not forget about who's right and who's wrong. It's lost. And so, fighting a lost war is stupid by definition.
Who wants to be the last person to die in a losing war? Yeah. And they continuously go with this idea that because Trump wants to end it, then it is by definition wrong. They have lost their minds. And this is why
if Putin says something, it's wrong. Now, Putin says a lot of things that are right. And, it's just...
Oh, but they don't accept that. From their point of view, the very fact that the Russian has a position on it is by definition wrong for you to lock onto it, even if it's right. It is super bizarre.
It's the power of propaganda. And nowadays, you're seeing it on social media, the pro-Ukraine people, they're just they remind me of the pro-Israelis, of the Zionists. They just yell and call you names and say you're an idiot. your Putin's puppet, but they have no arguments. They're just completely just reduced to name calling. And to me, that's like my little, as someone who used to be bullied a lot in junior high school, I'm like, I recognize that when you're reduced to name calling, I know I've won.
Yeah. Speaking of the name callers, one of which have lost their jobs recently. I feel some kind of way about this because I lost my job too. And so I get how difficult it is.
It sucks.
Painful it is. Yeah, it sucks. It's one thing to lose your job for doing something that you screwed up on. It's another thing to lose your job for doing something right. Or for advocating for correct things. Ann Reid has lost her job at MSNBC. And she put out a video that is very difficult to watch. Like she is crying in this video over losing the job. She points out that she stood by various issues that she fully believed in, like Gaza. And I give her credit for that one. MSNBC was one of those networks that got rid of Mehdi Hassan. Mehdi Hassan was very strong on the issue of Gaza. There is, let's say, rumor that part of the reason that Ann Reid lost her job wasn't entirely for the ratings, but because of her support of Gaza, because a lot of the people who effectively supported Gaza are no longer on the network. I'm going to play this, and I want to get your take on this. My audience had a mixed bag on this. Many of them say, oh my God, this is painful to watch this woman cry on air like this. Others danced on her grave. I will not dance on her grave, even though she would dance on mine from working at Sputnik. I want to get your take on this, though.
My show had value, and that I'm sorry, that what I was doing had value. And in the end, I'm sorry, I try not to cry on TV. And I think this is kind of like me on TV, so I apologize.
I'm going to play more of this, Ted, but I'm fascinated just by the beginning of this. She's not saying my show has value randomly. Ann Reid is making a choice in regards to where she goes with this. It's honest. She's being very raw. And for her to start off, my show has value. My show has value. On some level, I guess the firing gets across or this kind of implied sense of non-value, if that makes sense. I'm going to play the rest of it. I'm just fascinated with that beginning part where she's like, my show had value. My show had value. She's trying to point out, look, man, I was doing something that I believe had some, let's say, relevance, had some purpose. And on some level, that is being removed from me. I'm just fascinated by the part to start off. I'm going to let her continue.
And then it mattered. I see Karen is there, and she's been texting me as well. And so what I will just say is that in the end, thank you. Where I land is that the moment of guilt that I felt, that I went hard on so many issues, whether it was the Black Lives Matter issues of a young baby or a mom or a dad that was killed, or when we opened up people's eyes to the fact that Asian Americans were being targeted and not just Black folks, or went hard for immigrants who've done nothing but come to this country like my parents did and try to make a life and defended them. Or whether we've talked about what the president is doing that is subversive to the Constitution, that is injurious to our liberty, defending books that people find inconvenient, that Nicole Hannah-Jones put into our spirit, that we need to understand 1619 as the real founding of this country, whether it's talking about any of these issues, and yes, whether it's talking about Gaza and the fact that we as the American people have a right to object, to little babies being bombed. And where I come down on that is I'm not sorry. I am not sorry that I stood up for those things, because those things are of God. And I'm a church girl too, and those are the things that I was taught were of God. And
Ted, give me a take on this. I have such mixed feelings. In the first sense, she also went with this idea that Trump is Hitler. She also went with this idea of Trump and Russia. I would question if you put it to her that she would be okay with the war continuing in Ukraine with the hundreds of thousands of people being killed. So give me a take on this. I'm not going to say anything else. I've made my point clear earlier in the show.
Look, full disclosure, I've been on Joy's show in the past.
Have you?
It's been a long time.
You have been everywhere. I swear,
I've been everywhere, man. Johnny Cash song. But it's true. So the thing is, and she's always been very nice to me. So
yeah,
I have absolutely nothing against her at all, and I wish her all the best. And I really hope that she bounces back from this. I guess based on this, she's not. NBC normally keeps you in the family and then like rotates you out, in and out, and then you end up on panels, and then you're on the Sunday morning talkies or whatever. Doesn't look like that's happening this time with her. It looks like she's just gone. But if she has any brains, she saved some money and she'll be okay. She made a very nice living, right? So I guess. I think in a way, look, she worked for the devil. Years ago, my now deceased agent pitched me to Tony Mendez, pitched me to MSNBC, and they said, well, we'd be interested in having Ted come in to do a to try out for his own show. But he's got to agree to what all of our hosts agree to, which is there can never be any criticism of the Democratic Party or the Democrats.
Are you serious?
Ever?
They
Scout's honor. And I was like, I laughed. Now, bear in mind, this was a while ago. This was during the Bush years. And I remember just thinking, okay, that's insane. And I told Tony, I was like, well, but there's only two parties. So like, how can you, in a two-party system, how can you do political commentary or analysis if you won't criticize one of those parties, whichever one it is, right? I mean, you literally can't do the job. I'm not even talking about like the issue of self-censorship, ethics, journalism. I'm not even talking about that. I mean, you literally just can't do the job. It's like how do you do a nature special if you're like, well, we don't do oceans,
right?
Right. What?
Right.
We do land. This is nature on land. It's like, okay, that's fucked up. So it never got beyond that, because she said, I was like, not only can I not do this, I don't think anyone can do this. And I've watched with great interest over the years, people like, Rachel Maddow, who I used to work next to at Air America. And so I've seen like how people like that, navigated these waters. And basically, like, now that I've told you this, Jamal, you will see this on MSNBC. You will never, ever see like any acknowledgement like, oh, well, Kamala Harris, she kind of could have done this better. Like no criticism, no, it's all about the Republicans are bad, right? And the Democrats are great. So I think the point is that like Joy Reid signed, she made a deal with the devil. Yeah. And like, I'm not even saying she's a bad person for having done that. Under capitalism, as my mom used to say, nobody is free, because as long as you have to earn a living from someone, you are their slave. And my mom always said that, a good communist, she was right. And like, and so Joy did what, look, I've compromised. I worked for Bear Stearns when I needed work, and they were doing evil stuff. So, I mean, I'm not judging her, but I'm just saying you made a deal with the devil. The devil's going to burn you, because that's what the devil be doing. And, and so like, she's kind of a victim in all this, but she's also kind of like, this was going to happen. It's sort of like with me and my LA Times thing. The LA Times has been an evil institution for 150 years. They've always been, sucking up to power, and they've been a tool of the authorities and corruption and everything. So of course, if you're not that person, if you're a burr in their saddle, and I was, they're going to get you. That's what happened to me too. So, and so I think, I guess it's just sort of like I shrug my shoulders and I'm like, well, it sucks to be you, but it's not surprising. And you had a nice run, and I hope you saved some money. And to me, it's more of an indictment of the entire system and how badly, the system just sucks. I mean, that it forces. I mean, I do think, for example, we're looking at a lot of what's going on now with the Democratic Party brand is. Them and the media have been exposed as liars, right? MSNBC's ratings are down in the toilet, right? Well, I mean, Why do you watch the news, right? You watch the news to find out what's going on, what's true, right? That's the word, truth and news go together. And like, if you find out, like after 4 years, oh, well, the president that they told us wasn't senile, really was senile for the entire time. You've been lying to us the entire time. And she did that, right? She never, ever, ever said, well, Joe's not looking so good. Joe's like, who's really running the White House? There's no one on MSNBC was allowed to raise that issue or that question. Quite to the contrary, if they brought it up, they'd say they do it to ridicule Republicans who would bring up that issue and say, like, can you believe that? They're a bunch of ageist assholes. And it's like, but the point is they've been exposed as liars. The Democrats have been exposed as liars. And their brand is truth, right? They're like, the Republicans are liars, Trump lies. Yeah, and that's true. But it's like, but if you're like the, if you're the truth brand, then you can't be lying all the time. And, that's where you get found out. I mean, she and the network got found out, and that's it. That's the end of it. I mean, look, she can, by the way, go the independent route and, and redeem herself and make money.
Look, I can tell you, Ed Schultz, Crystal Ball, and Cenk Uygur fundamentally shaped my view of MSNBC. And it was very similar to what you just said. Cenk Uygur got pulled into a meeting where he was effectively told, hey, your ratings are great, but people are complaining that you are going too hard when you're interviewing them. And these were Congress members, in which case they kind of told him, okay, well, we'll take you off your show and we will allow you to come in and give commentary. Uygur effectively said no and went and started the Young Turks. And he's been doing the Young Turks forever. Crystal Ball pointed out that when she did this segment on Hillary Clinton, that they didn't like it. The network hated it and effectively told her, from here on out, you will have a minder, somebody who would oversee your behavior when you're doing these segments. We love you. You're great, but you need a minder. Ed Schultz believes he was fired for backing Sanders. Yeah. So Schultz.
No, Ed Schultz was definitely fired over the Bernie stuff.
Over Sanders.
Just covering him.
MSNBC has a very clear, very specific point of view that anybody that is on that network has to follow. And so if somebody is watching MSNBC thinking they're getting the truth, they're out of their minds. They're getting a version of the truth of the Democratic Party. Like, it's
there's more criticism of Trump on Fox, which is not to say there's not much, but there's more there than there is criticism of the Democratic Party on MSNBC.
You're totally right. I had no idea that you knew Ann Reid, nor did I know that you knew Rachel Maddow. That's fascinating to me.
Well, Rachel is literally absolutely. When my son was coming up, and he asked me one time, like, Dad, what's a sellout? I literally I was like, so there's this woman Rachel Maddow.
Oh, she was your poster boy.
Well, she's the ultimate. She's the ultimate sellout because look, maybe she migrated to the right organically. I don't believe that for a minute. She is a radical leftist like you and me. Okay.
Are you serious?
And, yeah, it's bullshit that she's like a corporate Democrat.
Are you serious?
It's all an act. Okay. And she just does it for the money. I mean, if she blew her brains out one day, I would not be at all surprised. I mean, it's complete like cognitive dissonance. She's just doing it for the cash. She's a cold-blooded like sellout. She's like she went for the Benjamins, and there's a lot of them, right? She's making like what, $20 million a year?
She's making a ton of money.
I don't even know what she does with it all. I mean, she works like crazy. But the thing is, it hurts your brain when someone that talented and that cool, like that person sells out, because you've really, I mean, imagine, I mean, seriously, if she were using her talent for good, for left-wing politics in some other broadcast medium, I mean, goodbye to Amy Goodman, right? I mean, like, goodbye. She's so much better. She's so much more talented. It matters more. It's kind of like, it's like just, I don't know. It's like a brilliant athlete, like getting into a bad car accident and then ending up in a wheelchair. It's like that.
I would tell you during the Bush era, like I was not radicalized, but I had my political awakening during the Bush era. And when she would do those segments with Keith Olbermann would do those segments, I was like, these guys are right. They're going in the right direction. And I remember when Obama took over, and it was at the end of Obama's presidency, where I was like, it came to me, okay, well, they don't really take issue with Obama, even though Obama was continuing the wars, Obama was continuing, the killing and all of this other stuff with the drones. Let's say their angst at it went away. Obama's in charge. The world is great. And it's like, dude, the world is not great. The same things you were complaining about before, Obama is doing now. How are you now taking this tack where it doesn't matter to you? You don't care about it. Like, it was this kind of, I guess, awakening, awareness. Wow. Ted, man, I have been informed in this interview. Thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
Ted Rall, political cartoonist, syndicated columnist. Check him out on TMI. Too Much Information with the great Manila Chan. She is fantastic. Also, definitely check both of them out at 10 a.m. Have a good one, my man. Be safe, Ted.
You too. Hang in there.
Thanks, man. All right. I would like to go to my next guest. We are joined with Dan Kovalik. Dan Kovalik is Syrian American award-winning journalist and political commentator, editor-in-chief at Middle East Discourse. Dan, is that still correct? I just want to make sure to get you right.
Yeah, I'm not at Middle East Discourse. No, but that's fine. I did teach at the University of Pittsburgh School of Law for 12 years. And I'm a human rights and labor attorney as well. And I have a new book out, The Case for Palestine, Why It Matters, Why You Should Care.
Thank you for that. I really do appreciate that. Trump initially went with this Joe Biden plan that effectively was going to remove all the Palestinians from Gaza and the West Bank and send them to Egypt and send them to Jordan. Now, Egypt and Jordan both said no, just like they told Joe Biden no. A large amount of the press in the United States was going with the idea that, oh my God, I can't believe Donald Trump was doing this, ignoring the fact that this was also Joe Biden's plan. I think, and I want to get your take on it, that they are stuck in somewhat of a pickle. Either you kill everybody or you expel everybody. Killing everybody feels bad, so they don't want to do that. And so their thought is, okay, well, we'll expel people into Egypt and Jordan. Now, Egypt has come back and said, okay, we have our own plan. And their plan is we have $20 billion that we're going to get, and we're going to rebuild Gaza. I guess my thing is, though, do we really want to go back to October 7th? Meaning, if the plan is just, we're just going to rebuild Gaza and we're going to go back to some normality, that doesn't seem to be a legitimate or viable plan. Give me your take on Sisi's $20 billion proposal. Does it have legs? Is there any chance for it to come to fruition? And if it did come to fruition, what would it mean for the people of Gaza in this kind of new rebuilding that they're talking about?
I mean, I don't know if it has legs politically. I mean, that is, I don't know if the U.S. and Israel will accept it. I think at least it's a start. I think it's a positive plan because it would allow the Palestinians to stay in Gaza while the reconstruction happened. And it should,
right.
That makes sense. Okay. So I hope a plan like that would come to fruition. You're right. Look, as long as Israel exists as a single, basically, single religious state where non-Jews do not have the rights that Jews have, and as long as the people of Palestine are occupied by Israel, you're going to have violence, you're going to have, discord.
Right.
But I think you have to look to the medium to long term. I mean, the way I view it at the moment is the main thing right now is Palestinian survival. They have to survive. They have to live, and they have to be able to stand their ground. Okay, as long as that can happen, I think Israel, in the end, I think Israel will not last. I mean, not in the long term, not in the next, I think 10 to 20 years, Israel will collapse under the weight of its own immorality, its own corruption. So, like any,
Just
war
to
of
interject real
attrition.
quick, but it doesn't
What's
seem
that?
like that. Just to interject, I'm sorry. It doesn't seem like that now. From their point of view, they're expanding into Syria. They're expanding into various areas of Lebanon, or at the very least on the borders. They have a U.S. administration that is completely obsequious to whatever
Yes.
they want. So, what would be the underlying factor that ends Israel? Meaning, if everything I'm saying is true now, what would be the thing? Why do you think that they would end? What would be the factor? What would be the strategic, let's say, deficit that ends the Israeli project?
Yeah, I think first of all, every society is to some extent founded on myths, right? That people need to believe in for that
Right.
society to continue as is. And Israel has its myths. And those have been shattered after October 7th. The idea, let's go over a few of those. I mean, one key myth to Israel is that it's the eternal victim, right? And that it is the hunted one in the Middle East, right? Actually, Bob Dylan has a good song about that called "Neighborhood Bully," and it's an ironic song because it's about Israel being the neighborhood bully, but really, when you listen to the song, it's everyone else who's the bully against Israel. Okay, and that's the myth. That's what That's a key myth. The other key myth is that they're invincible, right? The other key myth is that they're the most moral army in the world. Those have been shattered. Okay, everyone knows now they're not moral. They're not invincible because they've been, beaten pretty bad, even by Hamas, by people running around in flip flops. And they're not the victim. They're the persecutor. Okay, so and even many Jews within Israel understand that, and many Jews certainly outside understand it, especially young Jews, who they need to keep immigrating to Israel to survive demographically, right? And so I think that they will not get that demographic support. I think immigration will start going the opposite way. And we see that. There's going to be more Israelis leaving Israel than are entering. And that will affect them economically, it will affect the society, and it will affect it demographically, where if the Palestinians can survive, the Arabs will outnumber the Israelis. And that is a big fear, by the way, that Israel's always had. They've always known they have to demographically keep up. And I don't think they'll be able to do that. And also, they've already found themselves economically, politically, diplomatically isolated. I think that isolation will continue. And I think it will lead to civil strife within Israel, where you will have people fighting each other. And it just won't be a place people want to live. Again, of course, the foundational myth or the foundational promise of Israel is that it is a place of refuge where Jews from around the world can safely go and live a safe and prosperous life. Well, again, that's not true. No, everyone knows that that's not true anymore. It's not a safe place to be because they've aggressed against the Palestinians so much that the Palestinians will always push back, and Hezbollah will always push back, and others will always push back. So it's not a safe place, and it's not a place where people can prosper. The economy is tanking. And yes, they survive fairly well on US handouts, but I believe one, economies can't last on handouts. And also I think those handouts are not going to be there forever. Certainly not in the level they have been.
Yeah.
So I think for all those reasons, Israel is not, I think, again, time is on the side of the Palestinians if they can just hold out. It's a war of attrition. They can win that war of attrition if they're not forced out or killed, so that, and that
Yeah.
may be a big if. I don't know. We'll see what happens, but I think it is up to the Arab world in large part to say no. Now, I'll tell you an interesting thing I heard this morning
Mhm.
is that, there's rumors going around Damascus that the U.S. and Israel may prevail upon Jelani, the self-appointed president of Syria, to take in Palestinians
Really?
in return for aid, in return for normalization of relationships and end of sanctions. So let's keep our eye on Syria. See, that's another card that Trump may be able to play, because Jelani, with Assad removed and Jelani basically being a puppet of the West, and he's shown himself to be that up till now, he may be willing to do what other Arab countries are not willing to do. So let's keep an eye out on Syria.
How would that even work? I mean, so what is the thought that they would forcibly expel the Palestinians into Syria? Where would they live? Where would the housing come from? Like, how does that materially
Well,
work?
I assume that the U.S. would say, "Oh, we'll build those houses. We'll make sure there's places for people to live there." Again, this is a very embryonic idea, but I
But
do
it's not
think
shocking idea.
no.
I mean, considering Trump wants them out, Egypt has said no. Jordan
Jordan
said
said
no.
no. Even Saudi Arabia is saying they won't go along with that plan. So Syria is the X factor. They got a new puppet in town that they
Yeah.
may try to prevail on. So, we'll just see. But I think people need to keep their eye on Syria and whether they might be
What's
willing
happening
to
in the
collaborate on ethnic cleansing.
What's happening in the West Bank? It's not getting a huge amount of view just because of what's taking place in Gaza, but something is clearly taking place on the ground.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say there's a new Nakba happening there. I think 40,000 Palestinians have been displaced from some of the refugee camps there, and Israel's saying they'll never be allowed to return. You have mass destruction of housing and infrastructure, killings of Palestinians, including Palestinian children, and large numbers of arrests of Palestinians. So what you're seeing is an aggression against the West Bank that everyone agrees has not been seen since 1967.
I guess to what end, though? Like,
I
meaning
think they
if those
want to
people,
push those. I think they want to. They've said what they want. They want to annex the West Bank, and I think they want to push those Palestinians into Jordan. Push the people of Gaza and Egypt. Push the people of the West Bank into Jordan, which happened to some extent. During the first Nakba and the occupation of 1967. Again, Jordan says they'll resist that.
right?
Hopefully they will. But we'll see. Again, I think that Israel feels. Here's the danger we have: is that I think Israel understands everything I've just said about its own vulnerabilities
Right.
over the fact that if the Palestinians survive in place, Israel will lose the war of attrition. I think they see this as their last chance to get rid of the Palestinians. And they will try very hard to do that, either, well, through expulsion and murder, so that it's a dangerous time for sure. And I
By the
think
way,
the
I
work,
think you're
yeah,
right. Just to say, I do think you're right. I mean, it seems like they're taking this as this is our moment. This is our chance. We are going to try to knock it out the park. We have an administration that's willing to do it. We have a U.S. administration that's willing to back us on it. So we are going to take the opportunity that we have at our disposal to try to eliminate this issue going forward. The issue, I think, that they're running into is they have no, I mean, to your point, nobody backs them on this. Like nobody is saying, hey, this is a great idea for you to expel the Palestinian population in Gaza and Egypt. Nobody is backing them on it. And I guess that's why I say, to what end are they doing this in the West Bank if indeed Jordan has already said no?
I think they feel they could force Jordan's hand. And some of it is like, really, it's like a kidnapping. It's like saying, the problem that they're going to give Egypt and Jordan in the world, they're going to present a choice, essentially. Either take these people or we will kill them. And that is a tough choice that countries will have to face. One can understand why that would present a dilemma, right?
Yeah.
Egypt, I can tell you, so I was in Egypt a couple times in the last year. And I think the Egyptians do feel that they are between a rock and a hard place. They've taken in about 100,000 Palestinians.
Really?
Yes, either people who were injured and needed medical treatment, or frankly, people who could pay a lot of money, pay a ransom to get into Egypt, about $5,000 to $6,000 per adult and $1,000 per child. And I personally know some people who did that from Gaza, who were able to, through family, friends who live in Europe and whatnot, or basically all of their life savings, everything they had, they put towards paying this ransom to one company that is owned by the son of President Sisi to get permission to come into Egypt. So there's about 100,000 Palestinians. And by the way, they're not well tracked. So that's just an estimate. It may be even a little more. They think, by the way, in toto, 300,000 Palestinians have left since October 7th. So that, that 2.3 million figure that we're given is certainly down, even before you start counting the deaths, is down to 2 million. Okay. And again, probably half went to Egypt. And they paid this money to do that. Again, unless they had a serious medical condition in Egypt, I believe took those people in for free. So, but here was Egypt's dilemma. Like, okay, we're going to take some of these people. Yes, because people are being murdered and they're being wounded. So we're not heartless people. We're going to take some. But if we take much more than that, we're just partners in ethnic cleansing. So that's been the dilemma. That's been the tension, right? And I think Israel and possibly the U.S. feel that they can turn up the heat enough. Again, they can murder enough people to cajole countries into taking the Palestinians as a last resort to preventing them from being killed. That's, and I think in the West Bank, you're starting to see that. You're just seeing, and also what they're doing, they've already made Gaza uninhabitable unless there is major reconstruction. It's not a place people can live. Certainly in any way that we think is properly, and they want to do that to the parts of the West Bank where the Palestinians live too.
So let's say that Sisi's plan is accepted, and let's say they decide to rebuild Gaza. They are rebuilding it. I hate this because I feel like they're rebuilding this only up until the next conflict that takes place.
Well, it's probably true. And that's always been the case. And there's always obviously this is unique. This, the duration and intensity of this has never been seen.
It's been like 80 years. And we keep stumping our toe on the same issue.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. It will have to be resolved. I mean, and it'll be resolved one way or another. The Israelis, their final solution is getting rid of the Palestinians. The Palestinians want
to stay.
Well, at one point they wanted a state of their own within the confines of historic Palestine. That's gone. That no one believes that can work anymore because Israel's destroyed the ability to do that. Where would that state be? So now I think the real goal, you have two different goals. I think one is Israel wants to get rid of the Palestinians. The Palestinians want one state that is multi-ethnic, multi-religious, one person, one vote, which Israel's afraid of because they know that would mean the end of Israel as they know it.
Right.
So,
which they're fully against.
Yeah. So that is the struggle, and so again, for Israel to get what it wants, it needs to murder people and ethnically cleanse people, and that's what they're going to keep trying to do.
What are the chances of that one state?
I think eventually it will happen. I do think so. I don't, again, not in the short term, but I think the medium to long term. I think within our lifetimes you will see that. What it looks, I hope Palestine is in livable condition by the time that happens. I think the Israelis are certainly willing to just bring down the house to prevent that. But the so-called Samson option. But I just don't think that what is happening is sustainable, and I don't think the Palestinians. I think they are resilient enough to survive, and if they survive within historic Palestine, they will win. I do think that, and not just because I want that to happen, but I think you see what happened in Gaza, where this round, after 15 months of genocide, the Palestinians are still there by and large. Obviously, a lot left. The 300,000, and a lot were killed, but most are still there. Most want to still live there, even if it's amongst the rubble.
Wow.
And I know people. I know people in Gaza. That is their view. Let
me ask you this.
Yeah.
If and I'm not advocating for this. I just want to put this out there very clearly. I'm not advocating for this at all. If the people want to stay, they want to stay. But if they can get better living conditions somewhere else, why is that not valuable? And
well,
again,
first of all,
I don't advocate for this.
Some would take that deal. There's no question some would take that deal, of course. And again, that's what the U.S. and Israel are counting on, that they've leveled Gaza so much that they'd get a lot of takers who'd say, yeah, we love Gaza, we love our people, but this stinks. There would be a lot of people who would take that deal, but the Palestinians are a unique people who are very tied to the land in which they live. And they love the land of Palestine. It is their land. It's the only land they know. And they have these incredible connections with the people around them. And so while some would take that deal, I do think the vast majority would be like, no, we'd rather die, or we're certainly willing to live in this rubble rather than be pushed out. And it's an incredible thing. Again, it's a mentality that a lot of us maybe don't understand. But
it is what it
I
is.
think it's real. I think it's real. So I had a friend, I'll just say, and this may sound really like I'm going on a tangent, but I had these friends, and they were doctors, and they were fairly well-to-do. They had a beautiful home, and they had a beautiful yard, and but they also owned this pond that was not connected to their home. It was, I don't know, a couple miles from their house. And they owned this land that had this pond on it, okay? And every year, they would have to clean up, what people would do. All these young people would come to that pond vandalize it, leave junk and condoms, and it was gross, you know. And I always wondered in my own brain, you know, like, why don't they just abandon this? I mean, why do they put up, you know? And you know, another friend said, well, you know, they come from Eastern Europe, you know, that's their, you know, the kind of peasant mentality. Like, this is their land, and they're gonna keep it, and they're gonna do
Yeah.
it, you know. And I think, you know, again, the people of, it's a long way to say, I think the people of Palestine have that same feeling. Like, you can do whatever you want to us, you can do whatever you want to our land, but this is our land, and we're not moving. So, and the Israelis, not only, you know, do they resent it because they want the land, but they're very jealous of that, you know, because they're not connected to that land. You know, the Israelis, by, you know, the vast majority are immigrants to historic Palestine, right? They came
Right.
from Europe, they came from the United States. They're newcomers. They are not tied to the land. And they're jealous of the Palestinians and how connected they are to the land, you know. And they want to destroy that connection. They want to root it out, just like they root out those olive trees. You know, you saw in South Lebanon, Israelis pulling out the olive trees by the roots and taking them back to Israel. They did the same thing in Syria. They did the same thing in the West Bank. That, you know, these olive trees can live for thousands of years. Some go back to the Roman Empire. It's incredible. You know, some are like 3,000 years old. And the Israelis, you know, have just, since the Nakba, they've destroyed like 800,000 to 900,000 of those, because again, they represent the
Connection to the land.
Palestinians' connection to the land, and they will root those out.
Do you think
Just
that
like,
Trump?
yeah.
No, no. I'm sorry to interrupt. Do
No,
you
that's
think that
all.
Trump?
Just
And
yeah. Go ahead.
no. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Do you think Trump wants to maintain this deal, regardless of what Netanyahu wants? What's your sense of
Maintain the
this?
ceasefire deal.
Yeah, like what's your sense of, because Trump is an odd factor in this.
He
Trump has
is.
put out
He's unpredictable. Trump
he is,
yeah.
and he's put out this video with oh, what is the man's name? It'll come to me in a moment. But in the video, he called Netanyahu sick son of a bitch. Jeffrey Sachs.
It was
Trump has
Jeffrey
also had,
Sachs, yes.
yeah, he also had clips where Trump was talking about this idea of Netanyahu not wanting a deal, that the Palestinians wanted a deal. And so it's like, okay, Donald Trump is being paid a huge amount of money to take a certain position on Israel, just like many other political people in the US. So it's like he goes to the Muslim community. He tells them, I'm going to get a deal. I'm going to end this war. I'm not going to start wars. I'm going to end this war. Where do you find him on this? He's been making this humanitarian argument of, well, we got to remove him because, you know, it's horrible living in that situation. We need to end this conflict. We don't want this conflict to start back up. So he's making a humanitarian argument for why he needs to ethnically cleanse, which is just outrageous, right? It just sounds bizarre in his face.
Especially given that it was the U.S. that really was a party to making it, to destroying it in the first place. It's really Biden and Trump tag teaming each other. Like,
it's so bizarre.
Level the place, and then you're going to say, well, it's been leveled, and I didn't do it, and I'm sorry it was leveled, but now to help those, you know, those people, they now have to leave. It's insane. I mean, really, when you just go beneath the surface, it's there's nothing really humanitarian
But
about
that
it.
is the argument he's making. His argument is, I know we destroyed this. I'm sorry for paying 70 to 80% in the destruction of all of this. But now that it's destroyed, we need to get these people out. It's that, right? So it feels horrible to even counter or to even counts the take. But give me a sense of him in these negotiations. Do you get the sense that he wants to fulfill this idea of, I want to end this war and I want to start another war, even at the expense of somebody like Netanyahu, who seems to be doing any and everything in his power to destroy the ceasefire agreement?
I think Trump wants the ceasefire to continue. I do think that. But I also think that if push came to shove and Netanyahu started it up again, he'd still keep arming him and funding him. You know, and he's kind of said as well, not kind of, he has said as much. He has said as much. Yeah, he has been pressed on it, and he said, it's not clear if the ceasefire will continue, and it's up to Israel. He did say that. It's not our war. It's their war. So, whether it continues or not, it's up to them. Now, of course, that could be political rhetoric. I understand that. But I think that, I don't think he's going to do a lot to stop Netanyahu. I mean, and look what's happening now. I mean, Netanyahu's doing everything he can to kill the ceasefire deal.
Yes,
I mean,
he is.
And I think he wouldn't be doing that if he didn't think that he could get away with that. So, I think the problem with Trump also is that whatever his intentions are, and that I'm not even sure what they are, but I don't think he understands. I don't think he understands what's the true nature of Palestine and Israel, and I don't think he understands the region. So I think he feels like he can snap his fingers and make this thing happen where the Palestinians leave, and it's just not true, And I think that lack of understanding, though, I think throughout history, those types of lack of understanding can lead to terrible, terrible consequences and terrible decisions. So, Trump is not a geopolitical strategist, right? So, that's of a great concern, that even if he had the best of intentions, which I'm not sure he does, but even if he did, I'm not sure he has a good enough understanding to do the right thing here.
No, you're perfectly right. Dan Kovalik is a Syrian American.
Actually, I'm Slovak American. I'm
Slovak. I'm looking at this. There. I don't know why this is okay. I need to update this calendar. Obviously.
Maybe it's Kavork you're thinking of, which is okay.
Well, I'm just reading through the bio that I have for you, and I think, okay, the bio is clearly wrong.
Yeah,
I don't even know why.
That's okay.
Yeah, I'm not even sure why the heritage matters. Yeah, as I kept reading, I was like, okay, I don't know why the heritage matters. Maybe it's just because the subject matter. Right. Dan Kovalik, I'm just going to say it that way. Journalist, author. You have a new book out, Dan. Please tell the audience the new book, just so they're aware.
The Case for Palestine: Why It Matters, Why You Should Care. I'd love for people to pick it up. And also, I'm working on a new book with Jeremy Kuzmarov called Syria: Anatomy of a Regime Change. That will be coming out in September. So look.
Jeremy is good people. Jeremy is.
He's a great guy, wonderful guy, good friend.
Yeah. Jeremy is really good people. Dan, thank you for this, man. I really do appreciate it. I'm sorry about the bio. I'm going to fix
okay.
This
it's
now.
all good. It happens. And I enjoy your show. I enjoy you. I'm happy to come back again. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. You have a fantastic evening. Be safe, man.
You too. Take care.
All right. I'm going from one Daniel to another. Daniel McAdams. Daniel McAdams, he is executive director of the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity. Daniel, my man, how you doing this morning? You doing okay?
Good morning, Jamal. How are you?
I am doing good. Better that you're joining me. I saw on Twitter that you posted, you responded to, I believe it was something that Emmanuel Macron said. Emmanuel Macron has met Trump. He and Keir Starmer is effectively trying to influence Trump to go a different tact on the issue of Ukraine. That doesn't seem to be the case, considering what took place in the United Nations yesterday, where the U.S. refused to go along with Europe on this idea of an unprovoked war of aggression. In fact, the U.S. is standing closer to Russia in regards to what they want to come out with their own communique. Macron insisted that it was Russia that broke peace terms. And if I'm not mistaken, you pointed out, well, that's not true. This is speech that these were giving Macron standing there with Trump. I want to get your take on this. This is yesterday, I believe.
And especially when you disagree. I stopped my discussion with President Putin after Bucha and the war crimes because I considered that we had nothing to get from him in the time. Now this is a chance. There is a big change because there is a new U.S. administration. So this is a new context. So there is good reason for President Trump to re-engage with President Putin. But my experience is the following. and I shared it with President Trump and the team. In 2014, our predecessors negotiated peace with President Putin. But because of the lack of guarantees, and especially security guarantees, President Putin violated this peace. And I had several discussions, especially beginning of 2022, several times, 7 hours with President Putin, 15 days before the launching of the attack.
Is this true? Is this true? Like, that's an astonishing thing for Macron to stand there and say. Give me your take on this.
He's an absolute liar. He came with the pack of lies. It's absolutely untrue. First of all, Bucha was not a massacre at all. That was completely fake. It was just debunked a few months ago. If anyone's been paying attention, maybe his intel people are sleeping, or maybe he doesn't want to know the truth. But that was an absolutely staged massacre. The people were already dead when they were placed in the streets. I want to go into detail, but it's been thoroughly debunked, not by the Russians, by the way. So that's bogus. 2014, he was negotiating peace. No, he was putting in. He was involved. He was participating in the regime change, overthrowing an elected government, and the whole idea of the Minsk agreements being violated by Trump is absolutely untrue. And we know that because Angela Merkel herself told Zeit that was a way for them to bide their time while they were rearming Ukraine. She literally admitted it. And Macron's predecessor, Hollande, was participating with Merkel in this charade of Minsk. And if they think that Russia didn't know what they were doing, well, they were wrong. And that's why Putin took every opportunity after that, up until the very end of 22, saying, listen, guys, I'm serious about this. I'm not joking. I'm serious. I'm not joking. And they all said he's bluffing. Well, he didn't bluff. So Macron is an absolute liar. And hopefully there's someone in Trump's circles who knows the truth about this stuff. It's not that hard to find.
Well, it doesn't seem that Trump is paying all that much attention to him, considering the UN vote yesterday. And you're right. Macron is lying through his teeth. As you pointed out, Angela Merkel and Hollande both came out and stated openly that they lied, which again is astonishing on its face, that you would have these kind of international meetings, international agreements, treaties even, and Germany, France, all of these countries effectively blew all of these things off leading up into the conflict. Give me your take on Trump in all of this. I've been shocked at the speed at which U.S. foreign policy has fundamentally changed. He seems to be legitimate in trying to get some kind of deal. What is your take on Trump and all of this that has been taking place in regards to U.S. geopolitical policy and the speed at which it has fundamentally changed now that Trump is in office?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, we have to play pop psychologist with Trump because I hate doing it, but I'm going to do it anyway. Why not? It's early in the morning. I think he sees in Putin someone like himself. A doer rather than a talker. I mean, the Europeans have been talking for 3 years about Ukraine without doing a thing except writing checks to Zelensky's bank account. And Trump himself has said it. You guys had 3 years to sit down and you didn't. And I think Trump emphasizes action and doing things. I think that's his nature. That's his background. And I think he sees in Putin someone who does things on a similar level. I mean, how many times have the Europeans been saying, we're going to send troops in, we're going to send troops in. Oh, no, we're not. No, we're not. It's been at least 10 times Macron has been the chief instigator of this. So blah, blah, blah. And I just don't think Trump respects people like that. So, but at the same time, the people around him, I believe, are in the blah, blah, blah category. You know, they're going over, they are telling the Germans how what great allies they are and the French what great allies they are, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe they just have to do that to keep the pot from boiling over. Who knows? But, you know, Trump, one day to the next, you never know what he's going to do. But I think he's on the right track when it comes to this. Let's get this thing over with, you know, and let's stop dilly-dallying around because people are dying. It's a pretty good sentiment.
Have you been shocked at the way liberals... I remember you and I had a conversation once, and you pointed out that there used to be a contingent on the left that you could talk to, deal with these kind of geopolitical issues involving peace and negotiations. and that somewhere along the way that evaporated. Have you been shocked at the way liberals have looked at this and thought to have effectively taken a position that Trump is the devil, and that even if the devil is ending a war where all of these people are being massacred, that he is somehow wrong in ending that war? I have been shocked at liberals' take on this. I mean, liberals are supposed to be the people who are fundamentally anti-war, at the very least, don't believe in these wars. And yeah, I know FDR, I know LBJ, Vietnam, World War II, all that stuff. Meaning, it's their moniker. It's the way they talk about it. Reality is a bit different. I have been shocked, though, at the veracity that they have fundamentally accepted a position that if Donald Trump is trying to end the war, then by definition, it is somehow wrong that he is ending this war. And so we must somehow support this war in continuance, despite the fact that they've lost the war. Like, I've been shocked that liberals have taken this tact. What is your take on this? Why do you think that they've taken this tact? I guess there's that, and maybe I'm answering my own question with the Trump thing. But it is disheartening to see it. Give me your take on this.
Yeah, well, Trump is the devil and Musk is his right-hand man, the father and sons of darkness. The problem with America is that Americans are so focused on politics that they can't see policy. And the same thing that's true with the liberals is true with conservatism, Inc., right? America first. Well, with a couple of exceptions, by the way.
Yeah.
It's all blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's all sloganeering. It's all bumper sticker, so you have it on both sides. You have people like us who pay attention to the policies. Do I think Trump is a second coming of Jesus Christ? No, I don't. I think he's a deeply flawed person. If he gets a couple things right, hey, that's great. If Elon Musk can find $4 trillion, for example, and I don't want to get into economic policy, but if he can find $4 trillion that's been stolen or misplaced or fraudulently moved from Social Security from the people who deserve it, I'm not going to say what an evil guy is cutting people's money. I would say that's great because that means there's more money for people who actually deserve it. But because they hate him and he's a figure of hate, they're gonna ignore the things that he does that may actually help working people in the long run. So I just don't get it. I don't worship any politician at all ever, and I wish more Americans were like that.
Yeah, I saw Ron Paul. I think it was the other day. And look, he has been one of those people that have had a value set and that has functioned from a value set. And the value set has typically been, why are we having these wars? Why are we spending this money on these wars? And so if a president comes in and that president is like, hey, as deeply flawed as I am, I at the very least get this right, support him on. I guess also the way I looked at it, like I didn't vote for Trump. I feel like John Wayne, where John Wayne pointed out for John F. Kennedy, I didn't vote for him. He's my president. I hope he does well. I found myself there. I've just been shocked that liberals have taken this disposition almost as a tenet of religious faith. I watched Bernie Sanders give this frothing at the mouth war speech that because Donald Trump is somehow ending the war, that ending the war is somehow wrong. This just seems outrageous to me. And I want to get your take on something else. I spent, I think, the first 30 minutes putting a knife in Brian Stelter. I put a knife in Brian Stelter because Brian Stelter said this. And I don't think he gets how grotesque this is. And yet he says it openly without any pushback.
Explicit, at least it's pretty obvious what's happening. Some of this I fear is about illiteracy on the part of the voters, not knowing, for example, about the spending that's going to Ukraine that's actually funding American technology, right? Funding American manufacturing plants. And by the time you do learn those facts, it's too late.
But I do think, look, not
explicit, at least it's pretty obvious what's happening.
Now, to be clear, he is talking about people being slaughtered. And he is being very cavalier about people being, hey, we're getting the money back. So what's the issue? We're getting the money back. It's going into our weapons manufacturers. Our military arms are being paid handsomely with all of the money that we're dumping into Ukraine. And voters are illiterate to this information. And if they were literate to it, if they knew that the billions of dollars, the hundreds of billions that we're spending is coming back into our own weapons manufacturers, then they'd be okay with all of these people being killed and slaughtered to the hundreds of thousands. He's out of his mind.
I don't know about you, Jamal, but it's not coming back to me. Right?
It's not coming back to me either.
It's coming back to those big mansions in McLean. It's coming back to CNN, you know, through its partnership. The crazy thing, I mean, one of the crazy things, he's advocating fascism, you know? Fascism is the partnership between the private sector and the state. That is literally by definition what he's saying. Hey, this is great. We've got fascism. The state is the leading edge, and the so-called private sector are in bed together for the good of all. But guess what? It's not for the good of all. It's not for the good of Ukrainians. It's not for the good of us. All we get is the tab, right? All we get is inflation. Sick.
Yeah.
He's a sick dude, man. He's sick.
We're spending money to weapons manufacturers. We are not getting anything out of it. Stelter, and even beyond that point, like the people who are dying doesn't seem to matter to Stelter. And I've heard this argument made before by U.S. Congress members where they have effectively said, look, the money is coming back to us. What's your issue? And it's like, okay, but 100,000 people, hundreds of thousands of people are being killed in a losing war that we fundamentally lost. And I don't know, there's something fundamentally grotesque about that argument to me, that the hundreds of thousands of people being killed don't matter. That what matters is that the money is coming back into our own coffers in regards to our weapons manufacturers. And if that is somehow a positive thing in all of this, it's just utterly bizarre to me. From your take, where do you think this is going? Do you think the orthodoxy of the U.S. has been changed by Trump?
Yeah, but see, one of the reasons why I try to hold my tongue too, not that I'm influential, but you know, why I would recommend people hold their tongue in a way, is that I think Trump is also fighting within his own people and within the Republican Party, a long held concept that, you know, we have to continue to increase funding of the military. I mean, he came out, maybe he's saying BS. I don't care. He came out and said it. We should cut our military spending by 50%.
50%. Yeah.
I mean, I could not believe that. I mean, even the President Bernie Sanders wouldn't have said that when he actually was Bernie Sanders before the body snatchers came for him, you know? I mean, that is incredible. And so maybe he didn't mean it. I don't care. Once it's out there, then we can move with it. And the sad part is, you're right. I think more and more people on the right are starting to see it from a more populist way, which is that, hey, this isn't helping me. The spending isn't helping me. I'm paying $10 for a dozen eggs. You know, something is wrong here. If only there were more action on the progressive side, getting together and getting rid of these stupid labels and the bumper sticker mentality and saying, this is not benefiting America. It's benefiting a very narrow layer of the elite at the expense of, as you very well pointed out, hundreds of thousands overseas. You know, we've been there. We've done that. Iraq, Libya, we keep killing hundreds of thousands of people. Go back to Vietnam and 1 million, 2 million Vietnamese, you know. And so people starting to realize this and it's starting to wake up a little bit. We have to encourage it, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. Daniel McAdams, man, thank you for this. I really do appreciate it. I always enjoy these conversations. Daniel McAdams, Executive Director of the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity. You can learn more about Daniel's work at Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity by going to ronpaulinstitute.org. Daniel, my man, you have a fantastic day. Thank you for this.
Thanks, Jamal. Take care.
You have a good one. Be safe. All right. We have come to the end of the road. Yeah, we've come to the end. Ukraine never existed on an independent state since 1991. That is by Justice Bill Brett. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Back at you, Bill Brett. Patrick Show. That is, I love that name. There is a workers' strike back conference. Shama Shawat. I love her. I am, I love that woman. She's awesome. And let's go to the chat. Here's the Sir Bikes a Lot. More of that opening music, please. I don't control that opening music, Sir Bikes a Lot. Thank you for joining me, though. That is controlled by StreamYard. Thank you for the work that you do. I think this is called Excalibur. Thank you. Back at you. You support this content. You pay for this content. These shows get demonetized anytime you mention Gaza or the West Bank. They kill the money on the show. Look, guys, I want to thank all of you. We have come to the end. I want to say like, share. I want to say subscribe. I want to say like, share, subscribe. You can support this content through PayPal, Patreon, Super Chats, memberships, all of those things. But even liking the video is doing something for the content. And I appreciate you for doing so. You all have a fantastic evening. Jamal Thomas Morning Show, episode 101. Signing off.